You're live, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much, Clerk Helmke. Good afternoon, members of council, members of our staff that are joining us here today. We don't have everybody here, but we have those that are involved in our first special council budget workshop session. So this is Monday, November the 15th, and we are going to be conducting several budget workshop sessions. We do have a full agenda. We've got presentations from some of our departments and so on. We have our council is present. I do know that Deputy Mayor Burton will be joining us here shortly. He is just getting some technical things set up. So we do have a quorum, and so we will call the meeting to order. I did get regrets from Councillor Leishman, who will not be joining us at this time. So Ms. Helmke, we're prepared to start the meeting. All right, council, we'll move on, and I'm sure that the Deputy Mayor will be able to connect with us here in a minute. Council, let's approve the, we'll call the meeting to order officially. And I know it's a few minutes after 12. We should have started at 12, so 12:04. I'm just delaying a little bit, hoping that we can get Barry in there, but nevertheless. Council, approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the budget meeting agenda, budget meeting number 1 agenda dated November the 15th, 2021 as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder get this on? Mr. Roderick, Mr. Walker, any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? We'll put the agenda. That carries. Thank you very much. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. We're going to remind everybody this is a budget workshop session. Obviously, the budget is a large document that's encompassing a lot of departments. All of us are citizens of Clearview Township. So if there's any specific pecuniary interest or general nature, please present it. Otherwise, we will just carry on and deal with anything as it comes up. Thank you very much. Now, item 3 is on our agenda is to go straight into the budget presentations. I would like to open with a couple of comments that I'd like to start and sort of outline again as this workshop session is number 1. We have several workshops coming forward. During the opening comments from our treasurer, you will hear about our public meeting. Council may recall that we passed this document right here, which has the sort of a calendar of workshop sessions. We do have a little change in December. The public meeting for December will be scheduled for the 13th. It'll be part of our regular council meeting agenda on the 13th of December. On our presentation, we put it out as the 12th of the 6th, but we're going to move that to the 13th so that it coincides with all of our council agenda on the 13th. So that'll be the public presentation of the budget. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this is perhaps a really difficult budget for our council to address this year, given the COVID recovery that our community continues to go through, given the level of support that we're receiving from the province of Ontario when it comes to grants and other funding that come to us on a regular basis. It's continuing to be challenging. It is interesting to note that we as a municipality are impacted by a lot of external influences. We're no different than any other organization. We have to put up with the cost of living increases. We have to put up with the construction price index. We have to put up with basically the cost of inflation. Inflation currently sits at around 4.4%. That's a lot, and considering where it has been in the past. And so we are faced with a budget that's going to be presented to us by our staff that shows a significant increase in our budget. And so it would be my hope that the council will listen very carefully and find their way through to find opportunities for us to either reduce, delay, or create some type of savings in the budget. And so I put that to all members of council to consider that as we move forward. I would like to point out on the agenda for this meeting that we have a section on the agenda where we have questions, item number 4, which is questions and proposals. I want to remind members of council that they can bring forward any recommendations in this workshop at that time. They can also bring it forward at the next meeting, workshop number 2. Anything that you'd like to bring forward, you can do that. You can make amendments, you can, make adjustments, you can add things, you can subtract things, all you want. As we move through the workshop process, and then after we go through the public meeting process, we'll have one last kick at the can, so to speak, and then council will have an opportunity to pass an actual budget for the 2022 year. So at this time, I'm going to turn it directly over to our CAO, Mr. Ferguson. So John, again, as our CAO, welcome to your first budget session with us as a CAO. I know that we have a very good senior management team that have worked on putting together this information, and I'm hopeful that with your guidance that they'll continue to deliver cost-effective programs for the citizens of Clearview. So I'd like to put it over to you for opening remarks, and we'll get things started. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to say that this year has provided some financial challenges, as the mayor alluded to. 4.4% increase in the CPI. We're not putting that amount in the budget for the staffing. We're at 1.8% in the budget, and you'll see that. And other expenses that have incurred basically on all the growth and development that we're doing. In our preparation for that, we are feeling the increase on costs associated with construction, where it's at 11.6% right now. We're also obligated with many of our projects to continue on, and in some cases, we have budget amounts that we have to meet because we have contractual arrangements on those budget amounts. So with that said, there is not a significant amount of discretionary spending. There is some, and that will fall in council's purview and how they want to handle that. Most of the items in the budget are necessary. We can, if we're directed, go back and find some flexibility. We'll see what we can do. But I'll be upfront with council. There is not a lot of discretionary spending within this budget. So with that said, everybody worked hard while they're trying to get ready for the growth that we'll be experiencing, and you'll see some of the reflections in the budget. And some of the capital projects, we may be able to take a look at specific dates and when we want to start those. And those are some of the things that we can possibly talk about today. So with that said, I'll hand it over to, with your blessings, to Kelly, our Director of Finance, and let her begin the administration process, which I think is the first one up on the agenda. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much, John, CIO Ferguson. Before I go to Kelly, welcome, Kelly. Nice to see you. But before I do, I just want to go to members of council. Is any questions about the CAO's comments, my comments, as we get started before we go right to our staff? Anybody have any questions about how we're doing this? Okay. All right, we're going to carry on then. Thank you very much, council, and thank you, Mr. CAO. All right, Kelly McDonald, our treasurer, you've been super busy. I know that on the call today, we also have Ron Mather, who is our deputy treasurer. Welcome to have Ron on board as well. Kelly, go ahead, it's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, to members of council. Just to sort of highlight the things both Your Worship and John have said. CPI is at 4.4, and the non-residential building index, which is primarily what we look to for any of our construction projects, so a good chunk of our capital, is at 11.6, and the projections are right now it's not going down. We're receiving letters from vendors already stating to expect 10% increases in some instances across the board. So as we go through the budget process, keep that in the back of your mind. Municipalities across Ontario are facing the same issue. So today's presentations are going to be general administration, planning, building, fire, and recreation. And then on November 29th, you'll hear from the remaining departments, which are library, transportation services, and water and sewer. And Sasha, if you would like to start the slideshow, please. And next slide. This is just giving you a visual indication of where our prices are going right now. So the red is what dictates pricing on most of our construction projects, so the majority of our capital. And the blue is just the consumer price index, which is pretty much everything else from office supplies to not staffing, thank God, but everything else. Next slide, please. So the two departments that are making up the largest increase in the budget are administration that you're going to see today and the transportation services, which will be coming on November 29th. These are the main increases in the administration budget. So we have an additional 100,000 going into the Affordable Senior Housing Reserve. We've got an additional almost 52,000 going to the OPP contract, an increase to the Collingwood General Marine Hospital Reserve of $50,000. The election expenses are on there, but they're covered from reserves, so there is no tax increase for that. And the one new servicing level that the administration is requesting is an HR assistant. We had 31 job postings in 2020, 51 in 2021, and that doesn't include the fire department recruitments. So for every posting that we have, there's the review of the job description, the posting of the job description, processing the resumes, ranking resumes, and then potentially between 3 and 6 interviews per job. So it's daunting. You can flip the next slide, please. This is an abbreviated list of what the tasks would be for the HR assistant should we get it approved. And as you can see, it would keep someone extremely busy. So that is why our request is coming through. Next slide. This is a little hard to see. I apologize. It's a lot easier on the bigger screen in the council chambers, but I'm just going to. Basically, what we're saying is the majority of the ones that were listed on the previous page, those are our pressures for the 2022-2023 budget. So the admin budget is coming in at 422,000 over the 2021 budget. Next slide. For the 2023 analysis, we're actually coming in at 34,000 less. So it's a bit of a trade-off. Next slide. IT. There's nothing new coming through the IT department. It's just our regular server maintenance. So we've got the upgrades to the virtual server, and this ensures that we continue to get updates and keep all of our security up to date. And then we've got 3 new software costs that the IT manager is requesting. One is a corporate-wide password manager, and this just ensures that we're using proper protocols when we're creating passwords. I know mine are in a little address book, and I'm not sure that's quite the proper protocol for it. There's also a multi-level email security she's requesting, and this is based on remote access to emails, and it's just that extra security step to ensure that we're not breached. And the remote document approvals that we've been doing throughout the pandemic, we're continuing with that. It seems to be working quite well. And then the regular computer replacements. Next slide. So this is the IT department, and we have an additional $19,000, and that is for the software upgrades. Next slide. And in 2023, there's an $8,500 difference. Next slide. Economic development. Slide. So the events were continuing at $55,000. We have a consultant on budget that we've had for the last few years, and it's dependent on the Economic Development Committee's recommendations. Once we have those, we have the money in reserves in order to hire a consultant to put together a plan. Next slide. And this is the economic development. So there's an additional $10,000 for 2022. Next slide. And for 2023, we're looking at the $50,000 increase just because reserve transfers are decreasing. Next slide. So for our administration capital, we have the administration council chamber redesign that's been on the books for quite some time. The majority of this money is coming from reserves that have been set aside for this project. For IT, again, it's the standard computer replacement on our schedule, the server replacement, and then council computers for the new council. It won't actually occur in 2022. It'll likely be carried forward into 2023. The bottom three are all funded through the reserve, the IT reserve that we have set up, and the annual computer expense, the 29.5, is the only thing that comes from taxation. Next slide. For 2023, we've added 50,000 in for any additional needs for the council chamber redesign. It was originally designed, or the original project was to incorporate AODA requirements. Unfortunately, through the pandemic, we've found that that's not going to be the only renovations that we need done. So we've carried an additional 50,000 from taxation in 2023s. And then for IT, it's our standard computer and server replacement and upgrades. Next slide. And that is admin, IT, HR, pretty much all of the general administration department rolled into a ball. So if council has any direct questions.
All right, thank you, Kelly. I will ask, thank you for turning off the sharing. Any members of council with any questions on these extensive departments right here? I'm looking for questions. Mr. Deputy Mayor, welcome. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. We okay over there, Doug? Yep. So we're good.
These guys are in the council chambers. You're opposite ends of the chamber, which is good to
but
see.
we're not echoing, so we're okay. So Kelly, the question I have is, because of all the growth we've had, what's our income increase without adding any increase to the tax base? I'm not sure I asked that question properly, but do you understand what I'm asking? We've certainly had an income increase in 2022 because compared to 2021, because of the growth we've had. What's the dollar value of that growth?
Kelly, is that something you can talk about right now? Go ahead.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Burton. Right now, we're projecting $200,000 in new assessment. It was at $209,000 for 2021. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, MPAC is quite a ways behind in getting out and doing assessments. I'm hoping that number is very, very conservative, but it takes between 2 and 3 years before any new builds actually hit our assessment roll. So right now we're projecting 200,000 and keeping our fingers crossed that we are projecting very low.
All right. On the commentary about MPAC, if I can just follow up on the Deputy Mayor, MPAC did announce that they're going to keep the assessment rolls at 2016 levels through 2022. And they will, as a board, make another assessment on whether they're going to move that forward into 2023 or not. But since, right across the province, all the assessments are sitting at 2016 levels. However, if you genuinely look back at the price of properties in 2016 versus what you're seeing today, there's significant changes. So I would expect that in 2023, we will see increased values show up, which will then become increased tax levels applied to property owners right across Ontario. So it's going to be a bit of a shock, I suspect. Kelly, any comment?
Through your worship, it's going to be a shock to say the least. Anybody that's been monitoring home prices right now knows that 2016 is an extremely outdated. I look at my own personal assessment, and I'm certainly not calling MPAC to say it's too high. The unfortunate part, the assessment base, the dollar value of the homes doesn't really change. All that does is spread out the tax dollars we collect over different areas. It's the new growth. So where there was once a vacant lot, there is now a home on it. That's the new growth that we're looking to pick up as soon as we can, because those are the ones that are actually extra tax dollars.
Yeah, I agree. And that's significant change from the use of the property, which MPAC are the people that monitor the use of properties. So very good. Okay, anybody else with some questions there of Kelly or yes, I see. Okay, Mr. McKechnie and then Mr. Patterson. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. So with regard to this new HR person, my understanding is that the HR department likes to be separate from the other departments as much as possible for, obvious reasons. But if we do hire an extra HR person, will they be able to be used in the other departments as well? if need be, or will they strictly be HR?
Can I take that question straight over to John or I think Tammy was on the call a minute ago. There she is. Yes, John, you got any comment about the new HR position?
Yeah, it's a good question because HR actually works with almost every department as it is right now. So the individual will be working with all departments, but they will not be working for those departments.
Okay. But if let's say that, the finance department needs some assistance down the road, can that HR person go and help Kelly out, or because they're HR, do they have to be kept totally separate?
That's another good question, Councillor, and through you, Your Worship. Typically, we have clauses in job descriptions that allows us to assign people on special projects or other nature. I'm not sure exactly what's being put in this job description. They're still working on it, but we could put that in, and it would allow us to assign somebody to a special project. But I could ask Tammy if she's here, if she wants to comment. That's great.
Tammy, are you on the call? See your name.
I am here, Your Worship. It's not allowing me to start the video, but
Sure.
Thank you, John. There is always in our job descriptions, other duties as assigned is sort of the phrase that we use, and it absolutely allows for help out where needed in other spots for sure. And we've got great working teams here whereby that does happen from time to time as well. So I anticipate that if there's people that need help and there's time available to help, that will happen for sure.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question, Your Worship, if I may.
I suppose you can. Go right ahead.
All right, just a generic one here. So every year we put, specified amounts into reserves, and we've, we decide on that every year. But can we use any of the carryover to reduce the amount that we're putting into reserve? So let's say that we're committed to putting $100,000 into a reserve this year, but we've got a carryover of $25,000 that we didn't spend last year. Can we then reduce the amount that we're putting into that particular reserve by the $25,000 and just put $75,000 in the reserve? Are we allowed to do that?
Kelly, would you be able to comment on that?
Through Your Worship to Councillor McKechnie. We actually do report at the end of the year if there are any funds that haven't been spent or any projects that for whatever reason couldn't be completed. We move those forward into the budgeted items reserve to be pulled back out in the following year. So absolutely, if there was a specific reserve amount that wasn't utilized in 2021, it can absolutely be utilized for 2022.
Okay, so that would reduce then the amount that we're putting into the reserves in 2022 if we're using money that we hadn't spent in 2021.
Potentially, yes. Either reduce the amount going into the reserve or reduce the cost of a project from taxation. Okay.
One more question, Your Worship.
Sure, and then we'll get right to Tom Patterson next. Go ahead.
All right. Yep. I want to get in there before Tom. So the joint physician recruitment, I think what I see, we're putting $50,000 into that. Just wondering, how's that going? Are we going to get any benefit out of that? I'm just that's always made me uncomfortable.
Okay, I'll speak to that actually, as I'm the member representing that. We put $25,000 into it last year for 2021 budget. Right. It took till about August, perhaps, Kelly, that the committee actually had a commitment for that funds. I must tell you, and members of council, I was very surprised that the member municipalities that participated in the joint physician recruitment were not as forthcoming in their continued support for the committee. I'll give you an example. Town of Collingwood said absolutely they want to join this committee, and they acknowledged and they assigned a member of their council to attend the meeting, but they only put $5,000 in, not $25,000 that was the ask. Grey Highlands our neighboring municipality of Grey Highlands, was also asked to put $25,000 in. They put $0 in. They also sent a member to the committee, though. Town of Meaford was asked to put in some money as well to support this committee work. They declined to put any money in, but also sent a member forward. So as a result, there were two municipalities that participated with the full ask, and the majority of the members did not. Interesting, because the plan was to hire a physician recruiter that would then be an employee who would be responsible to do the recruiting and find physicians for our greater region. And because the funding was not available, and there is no funding from the Ministry of Health to do that type of work, that physician recruiter person has not been secured for 2021. The money wasn't there, and the physician recruiter work is still required. So I can tell you that our committee, Councillor, is in the middle of a discussion about that very point, including their chairperson is putting together a white paper about the position that we're now in, given that we don't have the funding to actually hire a recruiter, but our communities need physicians. So there's a meeting actually on Thursday this week. So if we could defer that discussion till after that meeting, we'll give you more of an update on it, but it is a bit of a surprise. And by the way, I believe, Kelly, just to confirm, it's $25,000 again asked for this year, not 50. I believe it's only 25. Is that right, Kelly?
Through your worship, right now it was just the 25,000 from 2021 that was budgeted for.
Okay.
That does come from the Economic Development Reserve, though. So should council wish to continue that, the funding is there.
Okay. All right. Councillor McKechnie, is that comfortable?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
I'll certainly report back to council after we have a discussion on Thursday. So great. All right. Good points. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Tom. Councillor Patterson, how are you today?
Good, thanks. Just a couple questions. I had a question on the additional revenues through increased assessments, and I appreciate where we are on that now with the 2 or 3 year lag. Could we have some kind of a tracking report on that, please? I mean, I'd like to know how many new homes are built and are taxable, that we're not receiving any income from, and when the projected revenues will be, because beyond 2022, we've got significant capital requirements going forward for 2 or 3 years. And it would give me a better sense of what the priority spending would be. Do we have to set priorities because money is tighter than we think, or do we have additional revenue that would preclude raising taxes because our revenue base is bigger? So
good point, Tom. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, can I ask that to one of our staff members, perhaps?
Well, Kelly and I have talked about this, so I think we know
Okay.
what we need to do. It's just a matter of, I just wanted to make it official, if you like, asking if council thought that would be a good tool to have.
Kelly, comment?
Through your worship to Councillor Patterson. According to MPAC, they are at about 85% picking up new construction and growth. I don't have a house number, but I'm sure between myself and the chief building official, we could probably get a pretty good estimate of how many new builds we've had in the last couple of years versus how many have come onto the roll and when.
Yeah, it just captures the lag, that's all. So that we can do some, because I know when we start wrapping up, we're going to have to make some tough decisions based, and hopefully we have a good projection, especially the future years. So if I may, I just wanted to make a quick comment there. On impact lag, is there anyone in the province, I'm sure many of us are worried about it, we just said it this morning, if we're going to hold to 2016 assessments, hopefully, God, we're not going to just go back to a 4-year ramp up. Is anyone asking the province to consider a 6 or 8 year ramp up, or whatever else would ameliorate that step up that we're experiencing? Some people might, what's the average cost in Clearview these days compared to 2 years ago? I mean, it'd be a significant increase. So
Tom,
I guess.
that's a great point, you know, and MPAC does try to communicate with us. They do send emails around to members of council. We do get occasional updates from their board, but you know, certainly they're like any other organization. They're suffering from COVID, you know, related issues. But they're Kelly, have you got any information on that as to whether they would create a state program on how they're going to catch up? Have you heard anything on that?
Through your worship, to yourself and Councillor Patterson, I haven't heard any talk. I can tell you that the median price listed on MPAC for Clearview Township home is $311,000. And if I knew where it was, I would buy it for my son. I don't know anywhere that you can get something for $311,000. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be a huge price jump. I would expect them to be able to do something other than the 4-year assessment period, but we haven't gotten anything official yet.
So could I just ask that we think for the next session, we think about what we could do appropriately as a township to request it, or join forces with others. Maybe the county would do it, you know, whatever. Because it won't be a surprise that we're worried about this, and others are asking the question. So so that's that. If I may just say one other comment quickly, I'm going to reserve judgment on our 100K social housing, because I think there's a discussion we should have as a result of the review we had with the social housing people from the county, and also with priorities we have. And then I also have some concerns about the non-discretionary aspect of the council renovations. To me, I see that, because I'm not as well informed as maybe others as to why that would be why that wouldn't be a discretionary spending at this time. There may be reasons, AODA plus. So I'd like to have a little bit more information before I pass judgment on that personally. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Tom. On the social housing reserve, I expect that we'll have a discussion about that. It's something I'd like to bring up again, considering we did have a pretty good workshop with the county. And then the second part to that is the renovations to the council chambers. You know, I reviewed some of that information this morning, and I know Clerk Helmke is with us, but if I can reflect back, council, to Clerk Pam Fettis, who made the presentation to us just following the 2018 election, to point out that we need to renovate our council chambers to make it AODA compliant, if in the fact that a person with disabilities, you know, ran for office and or was appointed to office, and we would not be able to accommodate them. So, you know, Clerk Fettis is the one who first brought that forward, and that was in 2019. And so I know that was sort of the impetus as to why we needed to do this reno in this chamber. But certainly COVID has brought forward the reality that we're doing this meeting in this style today, in this virtual format. So we need to create some sort of hybrid system, use some technologies to apply into the chamber renovations that will then allow us to conduct meetings in a safe manner, as well as to provide some services for the public to be able to see all of us at work, as well as members of our staff contributing. So Ms. Helmke, do you have any comment on that whole project? I know it's something that sort of you adopted when you joined us.
Thank you, Your Worship. For you to Councillor Patterson and the rest of council, my understanding from the Director of Finance is that this money's been sitting in reserve since that time. I believe the total amount that we have is $125,000. That's not all fully from tax stabilization. Part of that's from an accessibility fund that we are hoping that we can utilize through the accessibility committee, because a lot of our upgrades to the chambers will be for AODA compliance. Another part of that is that we're hoping to use modernization funds as well. So a lot of that money has already been budgeted for, but we're looking to move forward with the project in 2022. We still have to bring architectural drawings to council, review the format of the council chambers, outline technology upgrades and requirements. So these are things that have been on the books, as Mayor Measures said, since 2018. So we're hoping to get moving on this project with the expectation that obviously there has been price increases to materials, any labor So that's why the Director of Finance included the possibility of additional funds in 2023. As we get through the project, we might know that there might be some higher costs for things.
Yeah. All right. Councillor Patterson, are you comfortable there? We can move on. Okay. If anybody else on council, any other members have any questions in this section so far? Okay. I'd like to put a couple of questions to the floor if I can for the CAO. The Economic Development Committee, Deputy Mayor Burton and myself, and as well as other volunteers, serve on that ADC committee, John. And one of the motions that came from that was that we would do a bit of a study on bringing possible accommodations and/or hotel, motel facilities to our community, what that could be, what that could look like. We have funding available, as the clerk or as the treasurer pointed out. There's some consultant fee that's sitting waiting to do a full EDC plan for the community. I wondered if you could comment on that and how that might play out for 2022, and whether this is something that's being included in the budget, or is it just underneath the discretionary for the committee to spend that. John? I think you're muted there, friend. Here we go.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you alluded to, we do want to use the 5,000. We'll be coming to council for a request to use that money and to engage a consultant to take a look at the feasibility of a hotel in the Clearview Township area, and even possibly where it would be best located. And to also develop a potential strategy in how we approach economic development and the use of these types of accommodations in the community, and how do we help promote that so that we can get these types of development off the ground. As the community grows, in the previous conversation that Councillor Patterson was referring to, we have seen documents where the population of Clearview is in the vicinity of 15,300 at this moment. And as you know, we're expecting in the next 2 years upwards of another 450 homes being developed. And also, with that said, the developers have pre-sold a lot of these homes, so it's indicative of the housing demand that we're experiencing, and I think it will continue. As we experience that and people want to do more in the community, I think we have to position ourselves to be an attraction where people want to come and stay in our community, use our community as perhaps a part of their plan to experience either Wasaga Beach or even Collingwood. I think there's opportunities there. And if we had a promotional effort to show that we're a good choice for accommodations, I think it could be beneficial to the community. But we want to have a consultant report done and to back it up with good data to see exactly what direction we should move in.
Okay, so for clarity for me, John, as the staff resource for the Economic Development Committee, is that something that you can bring to council without having to do a special budget item for this, or is this something that we can do within the budget that we have for 2022 for economic development?
It's been in the budget for 2021, and our intention is to carry it over, so it will be in the 22 budget if council approves the 22 budget.
Okay, so it's not something we need to ask council to add. Okay,
no.
Great. Okay, anybody else with any questions on this section? All right, tell you what, let's move on. Kelly, John, where are we moving to next? Planning Department, is that right?
I think that's next on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay, John.
Building, I think, is next. Plan.
Where are we going here? Hello, Mara.
Hello, Your Worship and council, staff, and public. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, if that's all right with everybody. Okay. All right, so even though planning is pretty exciting, our budget isn't. So as much as we wish it were, but maybe that's a good thing. So essentially, we don't have any changes really proposed other than what we would normally have for cost of living in operating budget. Our official plan, I can give you an update on where we are there. Of course, we got quite far behind on our official plan through COVID situation. And we are expecting to have a full draft that the staff will be able to look at initially within the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to be looking to circulating this through to the agencies and then having a open house and public meetings. And we're aiming around April and May. So the funding for that is one time from the official plan reserve and from development charges. For our 2022 project, of course, we have the ongoing community improvement plan, really hoping to see some additional uptake on that now that businesses are back open and that sort of thing. We have 50,000 that we're carrying over from the unallocated 2021 funds. We also have money from the county, and that's carryover as well. Beautification Funds is a carryover of the unused 2021 funds. This fund is used for such items as the holiday and winter decorations that we've seen around town the last couple of years. And then we also purchased planters for Creemore and Stainer. So we got to see those this summer. They were beautiful. And additional items that were purchased this year were benches for downtown Stainer and for the parks. For our long-term projects, we'll be looking again at doing our official plan review probably in 2029. And so we have 10,000 going into reserves for that. It's funded from DCs and taxation. The zoning bylaw update in 2029 as well to coincide with that. Same funding stream there, except for the DCs. Stainer floodplain study, we'd like to get to this at some point. It's funded from DCs as well, and 10,000 from reserves. So really nothing's changed there. And yeah, unfortunately, that's it. As I said, it's not the most exciting budget, but we carry on.
Thank you very much, Mara. It's pretty straightforward. I'll ask, is there any members of council have any questions to Mara or the Treasury or the CAO in this department? Members of council? All right, I'm not seeing any. I will take the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. Mara, can you take a look at your, I guess it's page 5, where it says 22 projects. There's two things in this that I'd like to ask you about. The community improvement plan.
Yes.
It's been around since about
2018, I think.
I was going to say 15. We talked about it and we started putting money in.
2017. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was around that point, but we started putting money into it. It has assisted a lot of commercial businesses in our community. I know the very first round of it was simply about downtowns. We had quite a discussion at council to make sure that it represented all of Clearview Township. And I know that businesses, just as an example, I know that Agro over in the agricultural area, they applied as well. So, I mean, the overall success of the community improvement plan has been positive, and it's garnered some positive activity across our community. I'm wondering though, Mara, this type of plan in other communities is often handled through an economic development committee. So is this something that we should be transferring over to the EDC committee and take it off of the planning department's responsibility? Although I want to tell you, you've done a fine job on it. I'm not trying to take work away, but I'm wondering if this is something that should fall into the economic development committee. Mara, what do you think?
Thank you, Your Worship. It certainly could, no doubt about it. I mean, we're certainly, planning department is happy to help. It does, when we get busy with it, it does take a lot of our time, and we do have a lot of projects on the go. So some assistance in that area would certainly be helpful. I think I've said in the past that if there was some economic development help, this would probably be an area where they would be able to help the workload of the planning department. So that's certainly something that could be done. Yes.
Good. If I can go to John, our CAO, John, you're part of that, obviously the EDC. Is that a reasonable request to maybe consider that operationally moving that over to EDC so the committee then has a function in supporting this project?
I think there's an opportunity for it. We'd certainly look at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's something I always want to float it out there. Maybe you guys at senior management can have that discussion and see if that works out. And then you can present it back to council at a future date. I have another item on that same page, the Beautification Fund, that I'd like to ask about. I believe it was 2018 also that we did a survey across our community for the various poles, hydro poles and light standards that are around our community outside of the downtown cores that could have banners on. I know we had a talk about whether we put banners in front of our community centers. Certainly the Brentwood Hall was one of them we targeted, the Dunedin Hall area, and the project there was to bring banners to Nottawa and Duntroon and so on that would try to bring some consistency across Clearview Township so that the beautiful banners that we put up for downtown Stainer would be something that could be shared right across the whole township. Mara, has this project ever moved ahead? Have we moved it beyond just doing the investigation?
If I can, Your Worship, I believe that Amanda Murray was involved in that, working with the, she might have been working with the boards in front of the community centers to do something. I'm not quite sure where we are with that. I know at one point we were looking at doing some winter decorations on the poles, but we needed to provide electrical on them, and that became problematic. Of course, banners don't need electrical, so that makes them quite a bit easier to do, but we could certainly look back at that project. I'd have to talk to Amanda about that, but I think there would be money available within the fund to do something there, but I'd have to talk back to Amanda to see where we left off with that project.
Okay, I appreciate that, because every time I look at this section of the budget and I think of the Beautification Fund, I know that we did spend some money a few years ago doing works at various parks that were underneath beautification. So it's a multi-department function. I know you're look after it from the planning departments, and community development side, but I do know it's a recreation side, and it also even has some economic development sort of touch to it as well. So I wondered if this is another one of these items that perhaps the CAO could review with senior management to see if we can maybe place that in a situation where it gets some traction and get some support. Is that something, Mr. CAO John, that you can take a look at the banner program and work with Terry and Amanda? I know she did some work on it. You're right, Mara, she did. If we could have that looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and I think we've had these informal discussions as it relates to our strategic plan and how do we take some of the initiatives and priorities and put them into an operational plan. And these are all things that under economic development, economic action, this could fit into. So I think there's an opportunity here for the operational plan, and it's something that we want to focus on in the future. We haven't had time this year to do that, but I think it would prove valuable in identifying specific projects so that something that's suggested today doesn't get lost and it's put into the action of the economic development priority.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And it actually goes well with the whole idea of what Mara's role has been to deliver community development. And, I think of the beautiful water or flower pots and the self-watering flower pots that were put into to Creemore. That came out of this as well. So I'm not trying to take away work again, Mara. I just try to focus that we can, deliver these services across the whole township effectively for everyone. And we're spending dollars. So go ahead, Mara.
Yeah, and if I can, just to remind some people that don't remember, back in 2015 when I was first hired, I did have some Parks and Recreation, and then we hired Terry and we started to get some staff in there. So there is that history there. So
great. Yeah. Well, certainly things have evolved around here a lot, haven't they? Council, is there anything on those two items? I've got other items I'd like to bring up. Anybody else? Okay. Mara, if you could go to your long-term projects, page 6 of your plan, you talk about the Stainer floodplain study. You want to put some money into reserves. Always a difficult 4-letter word, in my opinion. Is this not the NVCA's responsibility to do floodplain study? What's that all about?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the idea there is for detailed analysis so that we can have sort of a two-zone system as what is floodway and what is flood fringe. And it'll help with developments happening in the town that they won't have to do as much detailed study on their own. Whether or not the MVCA is certainly somebody typically the MVCA could do that work for us. And they would be looking for some funding for that work. So we could hire them to do that. I think that's kind of how it's worked in the past.
Okay. Well, when I saw this in your, in your slide deck over the weekend, I made a note beside it that certainly in my former role as a councillor in Ward 1, and Councillor Deneen will certainly understand that we have heard a lot from residents along the Poplar Side Road West in the Osler Bluff area in regards to flooding as the waters come rushing down the side of the Poplar Side Road. And I think if we're going to do a flood study in Stainer, we got to do a flood study over there. I'm not sure if it's possible to take a look at that area as well, but certainly between the roads department and your department, it is something that should be looked at. Mara?
Sorry. Okay. Well, we can talk about that. I can talk about that with Public Works Department. I think when it comes to some of these things, we want to invest where we're going to get a return on our investment as much as, targeting areas where we see growth happening. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were looking specifically at Stainer, because that's really our growth node. But we can absolutely, I am not the best person to talk about flooding. I think definitely, engineers that work in that area are the people that we should consult with and talk with in Public Works and their experience and so on. But we can certainly talk to them about where they think we should be targeting, and we can make some recommendations to council.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else with anything? Sorry, I don't mean to be dominating. I always like to leave it open for councillors. Okay, you guys, you get to move on to the building department then. Mara, are you going to introduce that to Scott, or is going to go straight to him?
Yep, Scott's got his presentation here, and I'll pass it over to Scott.
All right, Mr. McLeod, welcome aboard. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well, Your Worship. Thank you, members of council and Your Worship, for entertaining that. Sasha's just putting up our slide presentation. So I'll just go through our budget presentation. We can move on to the next slide, please. So similar to Mara, there's not a lot of major changes in the overall operating within the building department, other than our annual cost of living and adjustments for wages. One of the new changes, council may recall that as part of last year's budget, the township went to a new leasing program for vehicles. So with that occurring, we're looking at reducing our vehicle maintenance allowance that we have within our budget, just recognizing that we won't have an older fleet and we won't have the maintenance associated with that. So we're lowering that maintenance value within our budget. And then just to highlight, because it is our first year going through a full budget with the leased vehicles, just to illustrate that the new leased vehicles will be the two replacement vehicles that we just received one in the past week, and we'll be receiving the second one soon. That our annual cost for that will move from what traditionally has been from reserves to operating budget. And so for 2022, the two vehicles will represent $22,500. We're also proposing an additional lease for the department. As council will recall, we brought on an additional staff member over a year ago, a plans review person that can also undertake inspections, but we don't have a vehicle for that person. So we have been utilizing that individual, and when staff are on holidays, filling in and being able to use one of the other vehicles, but we definitely need the additional vehicle for conducting those inspections. And that vehicle could be used by other departments, but mainly within the building department. So we provided that at a cost of $11,500 for 2022. Next slide, please. So I like to just sort of include in the annual budget presentation, just where we've been, where we are now, and this just sort of illustrates where we are in terms of our surplus. And so it just illustrates that, at one point in time, we were operating under a minor deficit, but with the growth and with a lot of the major projects that we've been seeing and evaluating, that you can see that we've had a positive financial growth within the building department, and the surplus has been going to reserves. Again, traditionally, those reserves were set aside for major expenses such as major software purchases, vehicles, and then if we had a year that was lean in terms of income, then we would draw from our reserves. We haven't had that for a number of years, and it doesn't look like we're going to have that for some time moving forward, and we hope that is certainly the future outlook. So we are sitting with around $1 million in reserves at this current time. Next slide, please. So as part of the budget, we have put in for next year as a new 6-month inspector position, given the amount of permits that we are realizing. So one of the things that we've really recognized with having the plan review position is it's freed up a lot of time for the inspectors to be fully in the field doing inspections. They still do some spillover plan review, but it has become limited, and it's been a great efficiency within the department having the plans review position. But even with that, and with the number of permits that we are realizing and what we have actually slated for next year, we currently have about 80 permits that we reviewed and have prepared to go out, but we have not issued them yet. And so they will show up actually as next year's numbers, I fully expect. And we have another developer which is dealing with around 70 to 80 new unit permits for next year. And then of course we have the second phase of Nottawasaga Station that will be moving forward. And as mentioned by the CEO earlier, a lot of this development is pre-sold. And so, the reality is it is coming regardless of really economic downturn, that sort of thing. These are real projects that are moving forward. And so with that, in order to manage the inspections during the peak period, we put in allowance for a 6-month inspector position. Next slide, please. So again, with this new position, we estimate the cost, including benefits, to be just over $63,000. And again, it's really based on what we see as growth occurring next year, and it's something that we will continue to see moving forward. Next slide. So again, it's just really this position is going to allow us to meet the obligations that we have in order to provide sufficient inspection services to ensure that this new growth will be appropriately constructed and protect our residents. With the inclusion of this position, again, we don't anticipate a deficit as part of the 2022 operating budget. So we won't have to draw from our reserves in order to maintain even the 6-month inspector position. Next slide, please. We've also put in a new item that we've been working with Tammy and HR. Again, we've run pretty consistent for probably the last 20 years or so in terms of the number of staff and the way those positions are structured within the building department. But with the growth and all that, it's probably time for us to look at if there's a better way of managing our resources within the building department in terms of what those positions should be, in terms of plans review, inspector, combination of both. And what's the appropriate titling and qualifications for those positions. And with creating those positions, we want to build an environment where it will lead to succession planning. We have one retirement occurring in another week or so within the building department, and we certainly will have more. And so, in recognition of that and future development or existing and future development pressures, we want to review those job descriptions, and so we put an allowance in the budget to do that of $2,500. Next slide, please. So that pretty much sums up what we're proposing for the 2022 budget for the building department, but I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
All right, excellent. I see Mr. Patterson's already got his card up. We're looking for anybody else. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for that report. We're approaching 5 years, almost 6 years, notwithstanding the COVID, of strong growth. And I think and someone mentioned another 400 homes. Just a thought. And it just starts with the buildings department. I say this now during our budget presentation only because the buildings department is the only one that gives us a graphic look at the value of the properties that we're seeing in our growth. But that growth has an impact on our community. It's on a social safety net, on our infrastructure, and we know that. And it kind of works through the budget as a quiet influence. As we start to grow, do we need to be maybe a little bit better planners, but a little bit more sophisticated in terms of now that we've had 5 years of growth, do we need to look at the impact on traffic, on our streets, on parking, on traffic control, on our parks? How many more parks do we need? Or, those things that we would expect from a growing community. We don't want to have overlooked. A multi-year outlook. Is there any discussion amongst the staff that we need to get a handle on this going forward to help us do things like budget planning?
Good question. Really good question. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I see the CAO, John, has come online there. It's really more of a question for the CAO and for the management team. Certainly the building department is always happy to work with all departments in terms of sharing of information, in terms of looking forward and looking backwards in terms of what our historic growth trends have been, for sure.
Let's go straight to John. John, you got a comment on
that? Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I think that having, for example, just within the next 4 years and probably the next 10 years, we could have 450 within the next 2 years and upwards of 2,000 new homes in the community. So when you think of all the different people, the different walks of life that come into your community and what you have to plan for, I would say that we do. We have a lot of community development work, I think, with our community as it grows. And in the building inspection, I think one of the things that will always be a challenge for building inspection is how much does the public really understand about what the requirements are for their properties. And perhaps if time permits, we could have workshops in the community that help people understand. But these are all things that I think have to be considered in our future growth strategy and how we're going to respond to growth. Growth is important, but it has its challenges at the same time. And I think all departments have a role in adjusting to this. So it's something to look at.
All right. Tom, maybe get further?
No, I think it's something that's on our minds. I just say that it's a subtle impact. It's not so much a subtle impact, but it's a quiet impact. And so I just think as a group, staff and council, it would be a good thing to do. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be separate from our strategic plan. Maybe it's now a significant part of our strategic planning when we do that in the beginning of the year.
Yeah. You know what, Tom? I've just made a note to myself here. because I want to talk about the strategic plan process coming up in the new year. It'll be somewhere around March, I think. Sasha and I were talking about it. It's made a note to talk about that very point. So I'm going to make sure that gets included in our strat. Thank you. Anything further? Nothing? Okay. Does anybody else get any questions to our building department? Members of council? All right. Scott, you want to announce it right now then? Who's retiring?
Oh, well, nobody's retiring, but look, let's face it. I'm on the horizon. So, you know, we can't wait until I'm out the door to plan for that, you know, realistically.
I understand.
And so that's, you know, we're being proactive as we should be. And I'm not going to leave this municipality without some sort of plan.
Thank you.
Plan. Yeah.
Well, succession planning is something that we've discussed in various levels across this department or across all departments. So I'm glad we're talking about it in your department too. Good job. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Scott. We're going to move on then. We appreciate that. Mr. CAO and Mr. I think we're going straight to the fire department next. Is that correct? Yes, it is so. Where's our fire chief? There he is in his fire chief's office. Here you are. Hello, Rory. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Good. All right. I will turn it right over to you. I've got my budget notes open, so go right ahead there, Chief.
All right. Well, pun intended. I've requested the helm from our clerk, so let me just do some screen sharing here. All right. Do we got the right screen up? Alrighty, well, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. I will gladly take you through our 2022 fire department budget. Quite simply, there is some changes, nothing super significant from last year to this year. With respect to our 2021 operating budget, we were sitting at 2.1 million. What we're looking at for 2022 is 2.21. Which would be a difference of $110,000. Our capital for 2021 was 140,000, and what we're looking at is 155,000 from reserves for projects. With that being said, there is 4 focus items that we are specifically looking at here, and I will certainly go over all these in detail. So we're looking at the transition of our administration position from a part-time to a full-time position. Our fire officers receiving a yearly honorarium, an addition for our Station 6 firefighters. And as I tried to provide that soft sell last year during budget, I think we've kind of hit that time where we need to look at an aerial truck. So with respect to our administrative assistant, just the requirements, the public outreach, and having more firefighters on staff almost than we've ever had. Specific to that as well, we definitely have more employees within the fire department than the rest of the township has combined. Just the duties that generates is certainly very, very time demanding, and the 4-day work week just isn't quite enough to keep up anymore. I also look at the added responsibility that was put on our administrative assistant during COVID and what that looked like, and it was certainly a great deal of time required. And Sandra is fantastic. She certainly spent a lot of times working outside that 28-hour work week that she does get paid for. So with that being said, the annual pay for the position, including employer paid benefits currently, is $48,000. The estimated increase by making the position full-time would add an additional $17,000, which would include benefits as well, which would increase the position itself from $48,000 to $65,000 to the fire department budget. If we move on to the next point that I looked at, and this is where, as you know, Your Worship, and I know the members of council know, the time that's put in by our firefighters is certainly a great deal. It encompasses time around their work, their family life, and things of that nature. But the one group specifically that, although they are paid a little bit more on an hourly basis, it's a little bit less than $2 an hour. Our fire officers or our supervisors for all our firefighters do put in a tremendous amount of extra time, whether it's answering phone calls, emails, quick little meetings, just ensuring things are running right in their station, as they are truly the bread and butter of making things run right. I think we're kind of at the point with the time requirements that we're putting on these individuals. I think it's time that we do provide them a little bit of extra just to compensate them. So as it sits right now, there are currently 4 captains and 4 lieutenants within the department's rank structure, but there could be 5 captains and 10 lieutenants if everything was full. With that being said, what it is I'm proposing is an annual $3,500 allotment for our captains, a $2,500 allotment for our lieutenants, which would, with the current rank structure in place, see an increase of $24,000 to our wage budget. However, if all positions were full, which I don't anticipate in the near future, the maximum increase for all positions would be a $42,500 increase to our budget. And this is something that's kind of been looming in the background for a little bit. And I know, Your Worship, 100% you are familiar with the Station 6 building, and Councillor Deneen, I'm sure, is somewhat familiar with it. But the current Station 6 or Nottawa Fire Station was built in 1995. And quite simply, it's been outgrown. We have larger apparatus, we have larger rosters. In fact, the Nottawa Fire Station does have our largest roster throughout the department. So when you think of the space that we have available to the firefighters in Station 1 or Stainer, we have more firefighters actually in the Nottawa Hall, and it's certainly a fraction of the size. So I did receive some quotes looking for what I could expect. So the proposal would be for a 40-foot classroom out the west side of the building. So for those of you that are familiar with the building, there is an overhead door that I like to refer to as the door to nowhere that does come out directly to the west side. So the addition would see a similar roof line that abuts to this addition and allows for a 40-foot classroom by about 20 feet. And this would certainly increase the space available for our firefighters. And I know for some of you that have been in there, they are literally tripping over each other and almost sitting on each other's laps to try and conduct training and meetings in there. So I think it's time that we certainly recognize their efforts and we give them the space that they need. So as I just alluded to, the financial implications, an overall cost of $200,000, $150,000 of that would be for building construction costs and $50,000 for engineering costs. So once again, as I did mention, last year that I think, just with respect to the growth of the municipality, which was echoed several times during previous presentations here today and by opening statements, the municipality is just growing, and quite honestly, the infrastructure is changing. The housing design is changing. The increase of industry is certainly changing. And if we want to promote this growth and have this growth, ultimately we need to be able to protect it. And in working with the treasurer, we were able to open up the development charge study, and we were able to have an aerial truck that would be 100% DC funded. So that would result in obviously no cost to the taxpayers. But looking at this picture here specifically too, this is a great indication. I mean, we have homes that are now, 3 stories above ground and in very close proximity to one another. If we look over on Atkinson Street, some of the new townhouses that we have over there, we have very similar scenarios. And the more of this that we see, obviously, the more and more likelihood that we're going to encounter emergencies in these areas. And we certainly need to be prepared for that. On top of that, we're certainly growing our industrial and commercial base. For those of you that are familiar with Pete's Naturals, as I'm sure you are, that is a facility of its own animals. So, we definitely need ways to be able to deal with emergencies there, and not just from a fire standpoint, but even once we get into rescue operations and things like that. Having workers on site here constantly, this seems like a never-ending project. The likelihood of staff or workers going down in areas that are hard to access certainly exists. You know, we have other buildings, longstanding businesses like Reinhardt's and newer businesses like Steer and Huron Tractor. We have additional marijuana facilities. There's certainly no end to all this. In addition to that, we do service 2 airports within our municipality and a great deal of agriculture. This is certainly the tip of the iceberg, as we are looking at a very large potential 4-story care facility and some 3-story condo units in the Creemore area. Something that I know is always near and dear to your heart, Your Worship, is our apparatus replacement schedule. And as you've always requested, I have added our small vehicles as well as our SCBA purchase in there. One of the things that I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit as I move forward is just to kind of look at some of the modifications that we've done with respect to how an aerial apparatus would kind of fit in. So as council is aware, we do have a new tanker truck on order that will be going to the Ottawa Fire Station. Through moving some apparatus around and not purchasing a pumper truck, if you will, that purchase has saved the municipality $150,000. If we go down to 2026, should we purchase our aerial truck, we're able to see a similar savings, that of $200,000 by replacing pump 1, as the new aerial would operate in the place of pump 1. We could replace pump 1 in 2026 with another tanker truck. That would save, again, the municipality this time $200,000. So we're now at $350,000 cost savings. Where things really start to add up is now we would be at the point, because the aerial truck is not an additional truck, it is a replacement truck. Come 2027, we're able to take a truck out of the lineup, which, provided costing stays the same, and we know it's not going to go down. My expectation is that's going to save the municipality another $600,000. So where the anticipated budget price of this aerial truck is going to be somewhere between $900,000 and probably $1.2 million, it looks as though we're probably at a cost savings of about $950,000 within the next 5 years. And as you can see after that, certainly everything is laid out for you, so, and outlined. That does conclude my budget presentation here. I would certainly open that for any questions that may arise.
All right, thank you very much, Chief. As always, it's good to see your presentation. It's always of interest to me, for sure. Now, members of council, have you got any questions to the chief and or the CAO about this presentation? Mr. Lamers and then Mr. McKechnie. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, going through his report. It's a nice report, Rory.
Can you just bring your microphone? You're all staticky there. Sorry. Try that.
Does that sound better?
Sure does. Go ahead.
All right. Good report. The only thing I didn't see in there, Rory, is a training budget for an aerial truck, because there's going to be extensive training on that.
Good question, Chief.
Perfect. So through your worship to Councillor Lamers, yes, you are right. However, that would, the training budget that we do have with respect to wages certainly does encompass any extra training or things of that nature. I truly don't believe it's going to take any real additional costs with respect to the fact that the training schedule can be modified in such a way that there is more of a focus put on that. So, by simply moving things around, I think we do have the ability to make that up without creating a direct impact.
I'm not sure about that, because the hydraulics and the stabilizers and everything, there's going to be some specialized training that they're going to have to go through for this.
And you know what, I can appreciate that, Councillor, but as somebody who's worked on aerial trucks before, like anything, there is a learning curve. Quite honestly, when we got our new rescue truck, there's a learning curve. If we get, new pumping apparatus, there is. But I mean, at the end of the day, there is. I don't believe the municipality is going to incur any extra cost. It's probably no different than running a pump course or a hazmat course or some of the other courses that we do. So yes, there will be extra training. I'm not disputing that one little bit. But I truly do believe that our current training budget will certainly allow for that.
All right, thank you.
Can I just follow up with that line of questioning to the chief? I'll get to you, Councillor McKechnie, in a moment. Chief, in regards to adding this type of equipment, this aerial device, aerial truck, and as the councillor points out, you know, the hydraulics, the stabilizing arms and so on, is this something that we need to discuss with our insurer and the fact that we're now going to change to a totally different type of equipment that we're now going to be you know, deploying with our volunteers? Is it something that we need to discuss with our insurer that we're going to be bringing in a pretty expensive piece of equipment? Chief?
Well, Your Worship, you know what I mean? You know, conversations like that are certainly always good to have. But at the end of the day, and I would certainly defer to Treasurer McDonald if she has any additional input, as she is, you know, the primary person that does deal with our insurance companies. But, you know, I think looking at her experience with respect to if we change focus and we look at perhaps, say, public works, you know, does that same sort of thing get done when we add a grader versus a grade-all or a snowplow? My guess is probably not. My guess is, you know, that adjustments are certainly made through the policy with respect to the value of the vehicle. But to my knowledge, it wouldn't impact directly how we're insured other than the value.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just do look at it. It's a significantly more dollar value piece of equipment that we're going to be deploying than what our department has. I mean, we operate with, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 12 pieces of full apparatus, and then we have, is it 4, let's call them small vehicles?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we're still going to be operating in a 12 vehicle scenario at the end of your replacement schedule. That's correct, right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead to Mr. McKechnie. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Rory, regarding the honorarium, I'm just wondering, so you're paid on-call firefighters regarding, regardless whether they're regular firefighters, captains or lieutenants. So they get paid per call out and also for their training. Is that right? That's how they get paid. And then the captains and lieutenants get paid maybe a couple of dollars more per hour than the regular firefighters. So do the captains and lieutenants get anything extra right now? And that's why you're asking for the honorarium? Do they get paid anything extra?
Through Your Worship, to you, Councillor McKechnie, no. So currently, as you indicated, you were 100% correct. So everybody's paid on an hourly wage, with the officers being paid a little bit more, but that is it. There is no additional pay that they receive or any additional benefit that they do receive.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just clarify for the sake of transparency? We're not discussing firefighter wages in this budget. It's remaining the same. You're just discussing an honorarium for officers. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct.
All right, just for transparency. Thank you. Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Just a quick question on the numbers to Rory. Are you proposing the capital improvements to the let's see here, to the Ottawa Fire Department, the firehouse to in 2022?
Chief?
Through Your Worship, to you, Councillor Patterson, yes. So I would maybe defer to the treasurer on this one. We did have some discussion leading up to this, and there was some talk about the use of DCs for offsetting some of our projects.
Okay, that's the direction of my question. Okay.
Okay. Can we, Kelly, do you have something you want to jump in regards to helping the chief out with his answer in regards to DCs for these capital improvements?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Patterson, we actually have a fire department building replacement reserve. So the money that'll be funding the station addition will be coming from that. And then we also have the joint public works fire facility budgeted for, I believe it's 2022, but it will likely carry forward into 2023. And that's the project where development charges are actually being utilized.
Right. So no impact on taxation?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Anybody else got any questions to the chief, fire chief, in regards to the fire budget, fire and emergency service? Yes, Councillor Lamers.
Thank you, Worship, to the chief. Yeah, you're currently running 5 halls, and at the time being, you've only got 4 captains, so you haven't even got a captain in each hall, and the same as your lieutenants. So you're understaffed in a hall or 2 on senior management.
Chief.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Lamers. Yeah, that's correct. And you know, I think you know, I'm sure council is certainly aware of one of the issues that we're experiencing in this fire department. And quite honestly, it's just the retention and the attrition that we go through. And as it sits, we do have minimum requirements of a minimum of 6 years of service that somebody needs to endure before they are eligible to enter into the promotional process for a lot of reasons, for experience gained and things of that nature. And quite honestly, we've hit certain walls and certain time warps in there where we just have not been able to promote the number of people ideally that we would like to. But, you know, in my experience and some of the things that we've seen in this department, you know, promoting for the sake of promoting does not generate better results. You know, this department is running better at that level lean than with inexperienced people that really shouldn't be at that level. So yes, 100% you're right. But we just simply don't have the people with the time on. The 60% of our people right now have less than 3 years of service. And then if you start going into the next wave, I can honestly tell you in our promotional process this year, so we have 90 active firefighters, and we are looking at a 15-person recruit class that's going to be coming online in mid-December. We are also looking, we're finalizing numbers, but we're also looking at the possibility of a 12 to 15-person recruit class in January. And of the 90 active people that we do have available to us, we actually have 3 people that have 6 years of service and can enter into the process. So just to give you an idea of how inexperienced this department is, 3 people out of 90 that have 6 years service.
Yeah, that's a little short-handed, and we got to try to find some way of keeping some of our staff on longer.
No, I agree with you. And, you know, I mean, one of the biggest things is, you know, we certainly see time requirements are big. But, you know, the number one demographic of applicants we get is probably in that 18 to 24-year-old now. You know, those 40-year-olds, the 35-year-olds, 45-year-olds, you know, quite simply, we might get 1 or 2 of those even apply out of a recruitment. And we're very happy to see those because typically they're grounded and they're not going anywhere. But when the bulk of all our applicants are 18 to 24 years old, everything changes in that time. You know, they get married, they want to buy a house. And as we certainly know, you know, the affordability of Clearview is maybe not ideal to their budgets. We have a lot of people that move away, get new jobs and things of that nature. So, you know, it's something that we've identified. It's actually our number one priority that we've identified with our master fire plan undertaking. So, you know, we're certainly looking at some input from them and some suggestions that they might have. But no, you're 100% right, and I'm certainly open to any suggestions you might have.
Thank you.
It's certainly a tough question, Chief, and I think the other aspect of this too is that if you look at the full-time departments that are in the south of us, or even across all of Ontario, I've been seeing certainly a lot of turnover in their retirements. And when large departments have retirements, as well as growth in their own communities, many full-time positions become available. And to be frank, a lot of our firefighters get some excellent training here at Clearview Township, and then off they go to get a job somewhere else. And I'm not surprised for you to tell us that most of our firefighters are less than 3 years experience. I'm honestly not surprised. So keep up the great work in the training. Let's just hope we can keep them around our community. So Okay, anybody else with any other questions to the chief? I've got a couple items, but I'm just looking to members of council. Okay. All right, seeing none. Chief, something that I always look for in your budget is smalls. Let's just call it smalls, as in your purchasing of pieces that you need throughout the year, whether it be scheduled replacement of hoses or boots or gloves or helmets or whatever. Is your budget satisfactory considering the turnover and the number of officers and firefighters you have? Are you satisfied with the budget you presented? And do you have any questions or any concerns about the turnover of the smalls that happen in the department?
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate your attention to that. I'm sure you recall we did make some adjustments to it last year, both our equipment and our bunker gear budgets, as well as we did have a line item in there for fire hose. So we were able to purchase the hose that we needed this year, as well as the bunker gear. That stuff kind of rolls forward. That's a perpetual item there. So, in the effort of, trying to do our part this year with respect to, we know it's a tight budget year. I think we can keep that where it is. And, quite honestly, thanks to the good graces of council, we're very fortunate in this department. And, I think we're in a good spot moving forward for the 2022 year for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you comment on that. It's funny because we can spend an awful lot of money on these 12 pieces of apparatus, and the smalls like gloves, boots, and helmets are just as important to keep our firefighters safe. So making sure we have the money to do it is important. Anybody else with any questions of the chief? All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Chief, and we'll move on then. Mr. CAO, I believe we're moving to our next department, which is our Parks, Culture, and Recreation Department. And Mr. Vachon's joining us. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Your Worship.
Nice to see you. Oh, and Amanda Murray too. Good to see Amanda. There you are. I saw your name earlier and I knew you were there. Glad to see you. All right, Terry, do you want to lead off with your department proposed budget?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I've asked Miss Murray to join me today. There's going to be a few slides that she's going to help clarify as well. And I will try to share my screen. If I recall from last year, and hopefully this is the last year we have to do budget presentations via Zoom, because last year I was behind on my slides. So I'm going to try again and see if I can actually stay pace with my own slideshow here. And if not, please feel free to stop me halfway and let me know. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully this works. How's that, Your Worship? Is that good?
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you, Your Worship, and Clearview Council. Again, we have the pleasure of proposing our 2022 budget. I will click. So of course, in 2021, we continue to have some challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic had really provided some unprecedented amount of challenges to our department. Again, as council knows, our facilities were actually closed between the months of February and August in 2021. So no revenue was received during those times. And we knew this, but it continues to be a bit of a challenge, but I'm happy to say that at least in September, we were able to start opening up some of our facilities. Our standard pool, our Centennial Pool, did open up, but again, with modified services for the entire summer. It was, again, Miss Murray and her team, a team of lifeguards did a fantastic job this summer and doing the best that they can. Again, happy to report there was no issues with operating the pool safely, so that was pretty good. But again, it did provide some challenges, and we have learned a lot from our facility moving forward. Also, most of our community events that we had planned were all canceled. Although the farmers market, we were able to open those up again in a modified state, but nevertheless, we were able to have a few farmers markets this summer. Some 2022 operational changes. So again, our proposed budget that we have today for capital funding, we're looking at an increase of approximately $16,000 from a taxation perspective. and also an increase from an operational perspective of 125,966. We're also requesting council to continue to support our Clearview Youth Center with the 2 full-time staff as well as the 1 part-time staff that we currently have. I have another slide with respect to the youth center. Also, to convert one of our permanent maintenance staffs into a full-time position. So at the moment, we have some summer beautification staff as well as a full-time staff that council had agreed to support last month. So again, we're requesting that one of those jobs be converted into a full-time position, as well as continue to support 1 temporary maintenance staff between the months of September to December 2022. Finally, we're also requesting in our budget to add 3 more summer students to our fleet of summer students. 1 being in the pool to assist with the customer service side of things, add another student to our tourism team, and finally adding another student to our summer maintenance team. Also, in renewing our operations in 2022, we're requesting council to continue to support our 3 seasonal part-time staff, what we call our eco staff. Some of the duties that they do is to ensure proper maintenance of our trails, maintain the new dog park, maintain the eco park as a whole, continue to inspect and maintain our community playgrounds and our parks, water and flowers and shrubs with our new water trailer that we received a couple of years ago, pick up garbage township wide, and your worship, as you know, especially during the COVID months, during the last couple of years, garbage in our downtown core has increased tremendously. We have actually dedicated a person twice a week just picking up community garbage. Unfortunately, our garbage gets filled quite quickly, and with these staff that council continues to support, we're able to pick up that garbage quite effectively. And also, we have from time to time, especially with our new community garden, we will have special eco projects over the course of the summer. Our youth center continues to grow. We have our full fleet of staff, and they've been very busy even during the pandemic in continuing to provide all their programs that they do year round. We were able to reopen up the youth center in September. Students and youth are starting to come back, which is really refreshing and really nice to see. And so, yeah, we're looking for council's continuous support for our youth center. In our budget, we have $26,000 that's been earmarked for our programming and our operating supplies. That's an increase of about $1,000 from last year. Some 22 items of interest from an operation perspective. We're requesting that council continue to support our community garden. So we've identified $5,000 for our community garden. As council may know, we've done some tremendous work in 2021 with our volunteers and our staff to really kick off our community garden, but we still have work to do. It's almost like a 3 to 5 year plan. As we continue to invest money in our community garden, it will continue to grow. We'll continue to attract dedicated volunteers, and I really believe that our community garden, once we're done, will be one of the best community gardens in the whole Southern Georgian Bay area. We have the space, we have the facility, and we have an excellent location. Again, I feel a little bit shame about this one. I know Councillor Patterson has asked for our parks plan. Unfortunately, we've been working on a bunch of other plans over the course of the year, but we are planning on releasing the RFP for this plan in December of this year. So this will be a project that we will continue to work on over the course of early 2022. At this time, Your Worship, I'll ask Ms. Murray to hop on the line and she can explain the next 3 slides.
Thank you, Terry, and good afternoon, Mayor Measures and members of council. So the next couple slides are just to provide an overview of the culture and tourism and events portfolio. We're really looking forward to 2022 as the return of the Signature Events program. That's where we provide direct funding as well as staff resources and all of our great special events equipment out at some of our major festivals and events that happen across the township. So to date, I've already been in conversations with the Stainer Duck Races, the Creemore Terrace Moor, the Canada Day celebrations, Creemore Nights, which is put on by the Creemore BIA, as well as the Copper Kettle Festival and a few other events that generate economic activity and tourism spinoff for our community. We're really excited to move ahead with the return of the Music Market Parket. So again, a classic car show, outdoor music, and the return of the Farmers Market in downtown Stainer. And of importance is the Creemore Farmers Market will be celebrating their 25th anniversary next year. So we're looking forward to partnering with them on a couple of their celebrations. The new Lowell Farmers Market has struggled over the past few years. So my team and I have a new vision for a vendors market in New Lowell using the brand new concrete ice pad surface. It'll be more of a shop and share vendors market. So farmers will be welcome, but mainly artisans, local community groups, organizations that want to share their information and to sell their own items as a fundraising activity. So look forward to having a redesigned vendors market in New Lowell. Continuing to support the Taste of Clearview, which is our restaurant promotions that just wrapped up this weekend. A really exciting opportunity for us to support our cafes, restaurants, and breweries, as well as the cidery. And then, of course, the tree lightings and rural lights, which is those large 3D light installations throughout Clearview Township. It's a great way to extend our tourism season into the winter and to make sure that people come back and experience everything we have to offer all 4 seasons. The budget will also include just continuing our community marketing campaigns, as well as the distribution of the new activity guide for 2022. And we'll also continue to fund the South Georgian Bay Tourism Association, which is our destination marketing and education organization for this region. Terry, next slide. Looking forward to next year, we will be introducing a brand new event. Our department's going to take on more of a leadership opportunity in terms of creating, executing, and implementing the Clearview Outdoor and Cottage Show. The date, actually, it's in the presentation, but it's still a bit flexible, but we are aiming for a May 2022 time. It'll be a true life and style expo for the outdoor enthusiast, featuring vendors from power sports, camping, fishing, water activities, and more. Basically emphasizing that ultimate weekend warrior and being able to come and shop at local vendors and get to know all the latest gear for your outdoor experience or how you can make your cottage or weekend home the best it can be. Due to the pandemic, the 3-on-3 youth hockey tournament, which was originally scheduled for April of 2020, was postponed. We're now proposing the 3-on-3 hockey tournament to be in April, from April 1 to 3. There's at least 10 age categories, and we are hoping to attract players and families from across Southern and Central Ontario. To be honest, we really believe that these new initiatives will attract new visitors to the area, increase spending, and perhaps even overnight stays, such as the hockey tournament, as well as it will generate a revenue source for our Parks and Rec and Culture Department through things such as team registration fees and exhibitor fees for the outdoor show. So these are just 2 of the new initiatives that our department will take the lead on. A really great asset for our community. An outdoor show and a 3-on-3 youth hockey tournament are not currently happening in our community. And quite honestly, when you do a scan of the neighboring municipalities in South Georgian Bay, there's neither one of these activities are in place. So we think it's a good gap that we could really fill and showcase everything that Clearview has to offer. Terry, just next slide. So my final slide is on the 2022 Small Halls Festival. And I'm proposing to reinvent this as a Small Halls Festival series. And as council and the general public is well aware, we are undertaking renovations plans for quite a few of those small halls. So we're anticipating that some halls, or perhaps all of them, may be either currently in renovations, still under construction, or at a point where we don't know what the plan is for those halls. So therefore, by reinventing the Small Halls Festival as a series, we will create a dedicated time frame, so approximately 6 to 8 weeks over the course of next year, where the halls will host a hallmark experience that's unique to their venue. This dedicated time will allow visitors and locals to experience each of the halls and their hallmark experience, which is coordinated by the volunteers who, as we all know, are really passionate about showing off their hall and welcoming people into their hamlets. We would still continue to have the Small Halls Festival in the sense that it's a multi-venue, award-winning event. We're showing off the most unique aspects of Clearview Township, having our 8 small halls. But meanwhile, we'll be able to stretch that visitor experience across more weeks or perhaps into several months throughout the year, while also reducing volunteer burnout. There will be greater flexibility to host events while still providing the dedicated staff and the financial resources that has been assigned to the Small Halls Festival. This is still just a proposal. I haven't been engaged yet with the Small Hall board members, but we're quite confident that this type of idea and this new generation for the Small Halls Festival will be accepted. Some of our volunteers previously had asked for the festival to happen over concurrent weekends so that they could attend other people's events, which I think is a really great win for our community when our volunteers are able to go to other festivals and other activities. So I'm really excited. I think the Small Halls Festival series is just a creative solution and hopefully will generate enough interest so that even after all the renovations are complete, for those moving forward anyways, that we create this ongoing series experience and really showcase those small halls. So I'm available to answer any questions, and that's the end of it for culture and tourism and events.
Thank you, Amanda. Carrying on, Your Worship, we're going to talk about some capital projects that are going to be carried over from 2021. From this year, so ongoing projects. So the Stainer Arena flooring, a little bit of an update there. We had $100,000 that was budgeted for 2021. As I mentioned last year, the flooring in the lobby there at the Stainer Arena has been an issue probably since day one. We think we may have found a solution, but we did not want to spend all of our budget on this proposed solution on this new type of flooring. So we have done a bit of a test area, which is the area that provides us the most heartburn. And so the new testing flooring was installed approximately a month ago. So we're gonna test this flooring over the course of the winter. If it works out well, like we anticipate it will, then we will spend the balance of our 2021 budget to complete the rest of the flooring. If for whatever reason that flooring does not work according to specs or does not work according to plan, then we would not have spent our whole budget on a floor that would have that just wouldn't have worked. So we're hoping this works, and then we're hoping to be able to complete this project in 2022. We are in the process of completing phase 1 of our Stainer downtown revitalization plan. We're now planning on going over to phase 2. And those planning initiatives are going to be starting very shortly. So we will start to have some discussions around phase 2 and start doing that planning process. So there was an amount that was part of the 2021 budget, which was $883,000. And so we're proposing carrying that over to 2022. Also, the Mad River upgrades. Again, this was a project that was planned for 2020. We've carried that over to this year. And again, we're proposing to carry that over, hopefully one final time to 2022. There will be a report coming to council next month in December to address this project and to continue to solidify our partnership with the Creemore Brewery and ultimately spending this money. Also, a carryover from 2021 is, as I previously mentioned, is to complete the parks plan, identifying our inventory, new opportunities, and ideas for new usage. Like I said, we're hoping to release our RFP next month, and obviously this is going to be carried over into 2022. Finally, the landscaping project at the Stainer Arena, Stainer Library. If you remember, council decided to postpone this project due to budgetary reasons. We're hoping to retender this project in 2022, and we're requesting that we carry over the $100,000 that was proposed for 2021. Also, the small halls, AODA renovations, we're proposing on carrying over the $1.5 million that's presently in our reserves. And again, we're anticipating RJ Burnside's report in December, and hopefully we will receive some updated amounts of what we think it will cost to complete those AODA renovations, as well as some of the other special projects attached to the small halls. And at this time, again, part of the 2021 budget is we're requesting to, we're anticipating an estimated debenture of approximately 2.5 million. That can change, and we'll know more hopefully next month. Some 2022 new or ongoing projects that we're anticipating for next year. Again, we have 2 of our zero-turn lawnmowers that have to be replaced or added. We're anticipating approximately 35,000, and that should be covered by our DC charges. We're also replacing and adding 2 towing trailers, 2,500. 2 major projects that we have that have recently come up is both of our office areas at both the Creemore and Stainer community centers. Both require some significant work. Both have slow leaks in them. When we were doing the RFPs, or the request for quotations for the office area in Stainer as part of 2021, we found out that the prices to redo roofs have increased tremendously. And so now we've proposed a new budget amount for 2022 that hopefully will cover the cost to repair the roofs at both locations. Also, we're planning on replacing the washroom stalls in the 4 washrooms that we have at the Stainer Arena, and also planning on replacing one of our ice resurfacers. The first one up is the Stainer Arena. The ice resurfacer is approximately 8 to 9 years old. They typically have a 10-year lifespan. We also know that when you order an ice resurfacer, although known as a Zamboni, we know that it takes anywhere between 12 to 18 months to actually receive it after it's ordered. There's a significant backlog on ice resurfacers presently today. So we're hoping to order this in 2022 with an anticipated arrival of approximately at the end of 2022, perhaps even as late as early 2023. We're also looking at wanting to replace the flooring in the Creemore dressing room hallway area. It's due to be replaced as well. Also, the natural gas boiler that we have at the Centennial Pool, it's on its last leg. It needs a significant amount of work, and the cost to actually repair and rebuild is actually very near or close to a brand new boiler. So we're looking at wanting to replace that boiler in the pool. And also, as part of the landscaping project with the Stainer Arena and the Stainer Library, we're looking at also wanting to build a new fully 100% fully accessible playground in the little green space that's next to the existing skateboard park. There's a lot of new technology that's out there with respect to accessible playgrounds. And we don't have a fully 100% accessible playground in Clearview. So this would be a really nice new addition. We will be working with our accessible committee on the designs and the concepts. And we're looking at wanting to use existing DCs and reserves for that project as well. That's all I have, Your Worship, for our presentation. I will stop sharing my screen, and Ms. Murray and I are available for any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Terry, and thank you, Amanda. Members of council, do you have any questions to the team from Parks, Culture, Recreation? Oh, there's a card from Councillor Deneen. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to Amanda, please. I'm just looking at the tourism operations and signature events. It says program signature events program will include direct funds to local festivals. We've got the Creemore Nights, Creemore Copper Kettle, and another one in Creemore. Nothing against Creemore, but they do have a BIA. What are you looking at for funding in that respect?
Ms. Murray.
Thank you, and through your worship. So the Signature Events program has been set up for about 7 or 8 years now, and it identifies large signature events that are unique to Clearview Township. So in the past, those Creemore events were included. The Creemore Nights would be the latest addition to be included. Direct funding is based on, honestly, just our team talking with the event organizers to see how the funds could best be utilized to increase the festival. So whether that's through enhanced programming, added more family features, it's for direct programming for the event. It can't be used for things like marketing or volunteers or renting equipment or things like that. It's to totally enhance the signature event. You made a very good observation. They are right now quite heavy with Creemore based events. Those are the ones that I'm comfortable announcing because they will be returning in 2022. The Stainer Duck Races is also one that I'm quite confident will be returning next year. Some of the other events in the past that have been included were the Gathering of the Classics, which is held at the Edenvale Aerodrome. Their dates are tentative. No announcements have been made yet. Also the Dunedin Literary Festival, which is called Words in the Woods. We were happy to support that event in 2018. I would anticipate something similar, but again, no dates have been announced and we haven't had conversations yet. The definition for the signature events I usually come back to council with, but it does require a higher profile event or festival to happen in our community.
Okay, thank you. And there was, sorry, I'm just looking at all my notes here and I've got lots of them. I wanted to ask about the outdoor and cottage show. We don't have any direct water access. We're not really a cottage area. I like the idea of the power sports and camping, but and fishing, we do have the Nottawasaga, but water activities, that would be just more focused like canoeing and using our own resources in this area. And I guess it's basically for the things that are directly impacting in our area. Yeah, we're not really a cottage area. That's, I guess, what I'm wondering about the branding there.
It's a good question, actually, Councillor. Yeah, I see your point. I mean, we're not Muskoka, but nevertheless, we are certainly a tourism area. Ms. Murray, maybe a little further explanation, or even Terry, about how this Clearview Outdoor and Cottage Show, what's this all about?
Sure, thanks, Your Worship. So it is still a concept. So a working title, I guess you could say. We wanted to make it more than just the traditional sportsman show, to try to be all-encompassing, attract a larger demographic to our area, into the event. Yes, to your point, we may not have the traditional cottage kind of cabins that you would see in the Muskokas or up north, but we certainly do have a lot of weekend homes and people who do come to Clearview Township. And, I really do see it as being the gateway to Georgian Bay. So if they are able to have their homes and their weekend homes here in Clearview and yet still take in all of those natural assets that are in South Georgian Bay, I think that's a huge advantage. But however, very valid point. The traditional cottage show that you might think of doesn't really apply in this case. It's a working title. I'm sure Terry and I can put our thinking caps on and come up with something creative.
Thank
Terry,
you.
do you have anything to add?
Sorry.
Okay, so go ahead, Phyllis. You still got the floor, Councillor.
No,
Deneen.
it's okay if they want to talk about that particular item. I was just wondering, you talk about the youth hockey tournament and bringing people here. We don't have anywhere for people to stay. They're going to all go to Collingwood, or they're going to go someplace to stay. All the teams would stay together. Everybody would stay in families. Like, I was a hockey mom, I know that. About the only thing that's going to do is bring us probably the income from the tournament registration fees and possibly the restaurants in the area. Even then, I remember as a family, it was French fries at the arena. So I'm just wondering, I'm questioning how much that would actually bring to us if somebody has actually looked into that.
All right. I know, Terry, you're very passionate about this. You've talked about this both in conversation with me, but also you have mentioned at council in the past. So how about you update us on how you feel a 3-on-3 tournament would be successful to help with the Clearview branding?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Councillor, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Deneen, sports tourism is a huge component of tourism in our area, as well as Ontario as a whole. I know from past experience that the 3-on-3 tournaments at the end of the season, as an independent type of tournament, is a very successful endeavor. These concepts that we've proposed, both the sportsman show style and the 3-on-3 tournament, we're looking at no cost to the taxpayers. We're actually planning on making revenue on both of those projects. So there's no cost, to the taxpayers directly. The big thing here is, yes, you're right, Councillor Deneen, we don't have the accommodations, but we do have everything else. We have the corner stores, we have the Tim Hortons, we have the restaurants, we have the retail outlets in our downtown core. And the goal here is to get tires in our parking lot. We know they might not stay here overnight, but they definitely will spend money here. If you look under the Ontario government, a tourist is somebody who is considered to be somebody who travels at least 40 kilometers away from their household. And what we're trying to do is get those folks at our arena so they can spend at least 6 to 8 hours in our community. We strategically structure the schedule so that they have to stay here for a bulk of the day. And if they're here, they're going to hopefully spend their money here. And at the end of the day, it is a huge economic driver as long as you can get those tires in your parking lot. Yes, they may not stay overnight, and yes, they may stay in our neighboring communities. But if they just go there to stay there, and they can travel here to Clearview to eat and buy their snacks and buy their gas, I think we would have achieved our economic development goals that we set out to do.
I think you answered me, Terry, when you said the strategic scheduling. I like that line. That's very good. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate that. But Terry, while I have you, I know I emailed you earlier. Could you please just outline for anybody that may be watching or looking at this later, just where the Nottawa parks fit in with that? And I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but you could defer that question till another time if you would wish.
Terry, Nottawa Parks.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. No, I feel quite comfortable, Councillor Deneen, and thanks for bringing it up. So we're in the process of finalizing our Nottawa Pavilion plan. Councillor Deneen had brought that up as a request, and it was supported by Council to complete that plan in 2021. RG Burnsides are working on that plan for us. I've met them on site there quite a few times over the course of the summer. There's a lot of research that has to be done with respect to that site. As we know, it's very, very close to the river. And there are a lot of regulations around building, adding new facilities or new building structures close to that river. I'm happy to say that we are indeed, from what I understand, able to perhaps put a new pavilion at that Ottawa ballpark. But a lot of research has to be done with respect to providing washing facilities and providing a septic bed. So long story short, I'm hoping to bring that report to council in December as well. If RG Burnside has it complete, if not, it will be early January. From there, council will have a good idea of what it will cost to build a brand new pavilion at the Ottawa Park. And our goal is to, over the course of 2022, is to finalize that plan and put the and look for the support financially from council. I have placed it in our 2023 budget to look at a potential pavilion, a new pavilion at the Ottawa ballpark. Also, there's the McKean Park as well. Councillor Dineen, as you know, there's a passionate group of families in Ottawa that would like to see us develop the McKean Park where the existing playground is. It's a beautiful piece of property that we have in Ottawa. It is our plan to work with those group of families and potentially volunteers to develop McKean Park. There's a lot of really good ideas. Unfortunately, we are a little bit limited in space. I don't know if we can fit all of the ideas that's been proposed in that location, but I'm sure there's a few good ones that can be developed there as well. So unfortunately, in 2021, with the roof issues we have in some of our facilities that must be repaired, there's only so much money to go around. And we're looking at really wanting to develop the Ottawa parks in 2023 at this time.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks very much for all the departments done with that as well. I greatly appreciate it, and I greatly appreciate you letting everybody know that now. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Dineen. Councillor Patterson, I recognize you, and I'm looking for anybody else. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, my lips are moving and you're listening to me, so that's good. Jeez. I am always impressed with, I've been here long enough to say that one time we had no programming, and now we have excellent programming. So I'm in full support of what you're doing here. This is a theme that I've kind of thought about for the last couple months as we hopefully keep looking to emergence from C-19 sometime. And no doubt, just doing the programs you do will have the same effect as my suggestion I'm going to make. But could we focus, does it make sense if we focus on a theme that really sort of draws people, our community together after, can be subtle after the pandemic, at least as we emerge out of the pandemic. I think it's fair to say that some of us are on edge. We've made some tough decisions, and the public is either happy or unhappy. And this kind of activity, that plans that you have, can really draw the community together again. I say together again, together. And if there's a specific focus on doing so, I'm just wondering if that's something you should be, or could be considering. So just weave it through some of our programs.
Tom, can I ask you, can you be a little more specific? I mean, I like what you're saying, and I agree with you that we have significant programming going on here across the township, but I'm not exactly sure what you're suggesting. Can I ask you just to be more specific? Yeah,
well, I'm trying to also be
diplomatic. I appreciate that.
I think this is a great place to live. Okay, some days it doesn't feel that way when we interface with the various communities, and it's not us. It's not. I'm talking for myself. I'm talking about the folks that we serve. They deserve the best, and sometimes we get caught up in the politics or the decision making, and hopefully next year, 2022, will be a year that we all kind of take a deep breath and come together as a community and celebrate, including celebrating the hopefully the return to some form of normalcy. That's all I'm suggesting. So as we're doing our planning, can we think how this would create that community building atmosphere as much as we have now, but maybe an emphasis on it now. I feel we need to let's not break down into camps and enjoy one event over another. For example, can we put an extra attention to drawing all the kinds of different people that we have in this our community, and just make those events a little bit more inclusive than they would otherwise be. All I'm saying.
Okay, I'm starting to follow you there. Terry, you had your hand up. Go ahead, Terry.
Well, I mean, I'll do my best, Your Worship, to try to address Councillor Patterson's concern. Yes, it is one of our themes. Councillor Patterson used the word theme. We are trying to include as much of Clearview Township, all of Clearview Township, as much as we possibly can when we deliver our programs. If we use a couple of the new programs that we're thinking of, the 3-on-3 hockey tournament as an example, the real concept there is a lot of our youth, they play hockey or they play winter sports. And a lot of times these kids are in the class together, but they don't play on the same teams. They're the same age group, but a lot of times their skills determines what level they would play hockey at. Our concept with the 3-on-3 is it gives an opportunity for kids who are in their classes year round, or mostly year round, give them the opportunity to play hockey together. So in our tournament, it doesn't matter what level you are. We're trying to include all kids that are part of their class to participate and have fun together. In our trade show, as an example, we're planning on hopefully hosting it at both arenas. Same as our 3-on-3, we're hoping to use both arenas and maximize our major centers. Unfortunately, Stainer and Creemore host the two major community centers, and we're tasked on trying to develop programs to enhance that experience at those facilities. But yes, we try to accommodate, try to include as much of Clearview Township as we possibly can. Our little hamlets, our smaller hamlets, are heavier on the baseball parks, and that's what they're very strong at in both Nottawa and New Lowell and Creemore. We're very strong in the baseball parks there. But yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Patterson, that is one of our themes. We try to include as much of all of Clearview as we possibly can, and have that celebration internally within our small communities.
Thank you. If I may,
go ahead, Amanda. Actually, I'm interested in what Amanda might say here on this topic. Go ahead.
If you don't mind, just letting me jump in from a perspective of how we promote Clearview Township externally, so outside of our own boundaries, that is something that our team has always been very conscientious of, which is why one of the main reasons with our signature event series, we manage the radio, print, and social media campaigns for most of those major festivals, so that we're driving people back to our website, which is discoverclearview.ca, and tying them into our social media channels so that you can get that consistent messaging and that we're a bigger, more welcoming township, that we have so many more activities that are happening beyond just that 1 or 2 day event or festival. So I think Councillor Patterson, you bring up some really good points, and I'll definitely incorporate that better together theme moving forward. But it is definitely something that we have been striving to do. And over the past few years, I think we've really developed a strong brand and a real strong welcoming message when it comes to discovering Clearview, whether you're shopping, dining, exploring, hiking, biking, or all those other activities. It's about coming out and seeing all the great assets that happen in our township, not just events, but all programming. So but definitely a very good point and a good reminder to our community groups when we're working with them that it's about being better together and having everyone participate. And also, I apologize, the sunlight is coming into my kitchen home office, and I keep moving around. So
Don't complain about the sunlight, okay? Like, we're going into winter here, so enjoy every minute of it you can. Go ahead, Tom.
And maybe just on a specific note quickly, again, I'm going to reserve judgment until I've seen all of the capital program. But in the spirit of looking for, in my mind, anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 of discretionary funding to see if we can get our increase down. I do have some questions on the 883,000 carryover to be spent on 2022 on the revitalization park. If I'm thinking this, I'm not targeting it specifically. It's a large amount, and if there was any possibility of increasing the phasing over 22-23, I'd like to explore something like that. And while it's a smaller amount, I would like a discussion on the library amount. So anything that can be saved there as well. You know, if it's landscaping, it doesn't sound like it's essential to the service. I agree, it should look like a well-finished site, but it's those larger amounts that I would be looking for some belt tightening, if you like. So just leave that for future discussions once I've seen all the program. And Terry, you probably expected some discussion on that anyway. So yeah, so those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. And some of those items are things that I had too. Members of council, any questions? Yes, Councillor Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I just wanted to go back to the outdoor cottage show on Councillor Dineen's question of cottage life. Just wanted to touch on that a little bit. When I think back on it, what made Muskoka what it is, primarily, that's marketing. And in reality, it's been a slow process, and no one's really paid much attention to it. But we actually do have a large contingent of weekend homeowners, and it does kind of remind me of how Muskoka grew way back when. And yeah, it's true, we don't have direct water access other than the rivers, but we are water adjacent. Yeah, to back up what Amanda was saying, I think there's some promise there. And the fact that we're just so much closer to the GTA, I think that's a considerable advantage. I like this idea, and I think it's well worth looking into.
All right. I'm not sure if you had a question in there. Did you have anything,
I
John,
didn't.
you wanted to ask?
I didn't.
Okay.
I just wanted to back this up. I hadn't thought of it this way until
Okay.
I saw this, but yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could do there.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Burton, Deputy Mayor Burton, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to actually support what Councillor Broderick just said. I mean, the biggest cottage show was held in Toronto, which is definitely not a cottage area at all. So I think the fact that we do have a lot of weekenders here, but there's many residents in Clearview who own cottages outside of Clearview, and then we have many weekenders who treat their weekend place as a cottage. So I think it's a great idea, Amanda.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Okay, is anybody else? Did I see another card from? Yes, I did. Councillor McKechnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to get off the cottage thing, which I also think is a great idea, but reformatting the Small Halls Festival series, I think that's a super idea. You know, it's that will allow the volunteers to attend the other small hall events And because when it's all on the same weekend, it's just all hands on deck. And of course, the volunteers don't get to go to the other events. And when they do get to go to the other events, they'll get more ideas for their own events. So it can only be a good thing. Also takes the pressure off the volunteers and the staff if it's spread out over a longer period. And it will also, to my mind anyway, it will eliminate any sort of dilution of events. I know when I deal with Duntroon and Dunedin small halls, quite often they are coming up or having a hard time coming up with ideas for that one particular weekend. But if they're allowed to have something like not be limited to that one weekend, I think maybe the events that they get might be a little bit stronger. So anyway, so 2 thumbs up there. I think that's a great idea. The other thing that I was wondering about, has anyone considered anything about recognizing the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in the events that we've got coming up in 2022? I'm not saying we have to make a big deal of it, but I think that that could be incorporated into maybe some of these other events, or it could be a separate event. But I'm just throwing it out there. I think that the Queen's Platinum Jubilee is something that has to be recognized in 2022. So I don't know if has that been any discussion about that at all, or am I the first one?
Thank you for bringing it up, actually, Doug. Yeah. I know about this coming up, and let's just hope that Her Majesty continues to reign through 2022, and we'll be able to actually have that celebration. But Amanda, have you got any thought on that? What we could do to recognize Her Majesty's service to our country?
Well, Your Worship, I always like a good celebration, so leave it with me, and I will see what I can come up with. I will admit, though, that the library, our Clearview Library folks are usually really good. They held a wedding shower for Prince Harry not that long ago and sent off baby gifts to Princess Kate. So I'm sure the library, I might have to team up with them and get some info. But Councillor McKechnie, thanks for bringing it to our attention, and I'll look into it and see if there's a way we can incorporate it in the near future.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's just an idea. And lastly, Terry, for you, how do you see the AODA renovations proceeding going forward? I know that you're getting all the engineering costs and everything. And are you planning on getting all of those costs at once, before you come to council? And then council will decide then how we're going to proceed, whether it's going to be we're going to do one a year, or whether we're going to do them all at once. First of all, personally speaking, I got to tell you, I'm still struggling with the cost of all this, and I'm struggling with the cost, or with the idea that we have 6 community halls outside of our 2 major centers, and then we also have the station on the green, and we've got a community center in Stainer. So basically we've got 8 community centers. I'm really struggling with that, and especially now with the cost. So I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have on that. But my question to you, Terry, is that how do you see the process going forward? Are you waiting till you get all the information and then coming back to council, or are you going to come back in bits and pieces? How do you see it going forward?
Good question. Terry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor McKechnie. The answer is yes. We're waiting for all the information. My understanding is we should be receiving a draft report that will include all 6 halls next week. And I'm hoping to bring that report forward to council at the December 13th council meeting. So at that meeting, council will have a good snapshot of all 6 halls together. If council receives that report in a positive manner, then yes, the next steps will be to work with council to develop a plan on how to implement those renovations. So we're really close, and we know it's taken a lot of work, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, but we're almost there. Again, I followed up with RG Burnsides last week with their main engineer, and they had to do a few more site visits at a few halls just to make sure that they captured all the right information. And I feel comfortable and confident in bringing a report forward to council on December the 13th. So again, it's nothing's been set in stone yet. We're still in the capturing of information stages, And so, council will decide once the report is received on how you want to proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, Terry. And Amanda, great report.
All right, Terry, I'd like to follow up with you just on one other item on that line of questioning. Certainly, in your presentations and in the subsequent discussions that have happened since we've had the hall presentations with both the volunteers and with the public, mention of some halls being perhaps more prepared to move ahead with renovations as compared to others. I want to point out clearly that Sunnydale Hall does have some very clear plans and some expectations even that they'd like to move ahead right away. Are we still in a position that we're looking at them individually as to when we could deploy, make a decision, or is your report, basically going to bring forward an all or nothing recommendation? Where is that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the report will include all the information for all 6 halls. So in essence, one report, but it will be broken down per hall. So in the report, it'll have 6 individual, mini reports in one, if you know what I'm trying to say. So at that point, council will see each hall, what it will cost, and council will be allowed to decide on how it wants to proceed based on that information received. So it's one report, but it'll be broken down into 6 separate reports within. And like I said, and if council wants to proceed in renovating one hall at a time, or perhaps 2 upfront in sets of 2s, or even if you want to do all in, council still has that flexibility as of today to make that decision, again, based on the information received. It's hard to really answer those questions, Your Worship, right up front here without seeing the final numbers. As we know, there's been a few additions that have been added to a few of the halls, septic beds, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So council still has to review all that information, but you do still have the opportunity to decide on how you want to proceed. I don't want to lead council in either way, but you do have the flexibility as of today.
All right, Councillor McKechnie, it sounds like we're going to get a report and council can make a decision about individual halls. So does that help you with that answer?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to see how how we were going to proceed going forward. I think it'll be an interesting discussion, and yeah, we got some difficult choices I think still ahead of us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else with any specific questions to the presentations? Any other members of council? I'd like to ask a couple things, Terry. I'm just going to flip back to my notes here because I was writing on the reports. I want to talk about your parks plan. Certainly something that was outlined in the Recreation Culture Master Plan is that we needed to do a plan, and you've talked about it a couple times. Can you outline? You're thinking $20,000. Is that simply going to be used for the consultant to do the work, or is this how extensive is this work, or is this something just that you're going to do between yourself and a consultant? Terry?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, again, going back in a couple of years now, this was an idea that was brought forward by Councillor Patterson. So perhaps if he can also share some of his thoughts as well, if I forget anything. But yeah, the plan is to work with a consultant to come up with a implementation plan. Set some priorities with respect to the assets that we have. Identify the gaps that we have within our plans. Doing a bit of a snapshot of the demographics of where our parks are. How are they being utilized? How can we improve the utilization that we have? What are the gaps that we have within our parks to better facilitate a better service? But yeah, in essence, Your Worship, it is the $20,000 has been identified to work with a consultant to come up with a final plan to help our department and help council over the next 5 to 10 years on where to set money aside to improve our parks. Right now, we're just basically doing, a bit of what we think internally from our department's perspective of where we think we need to put our money to improve our parks. This is more of a strategic way of setting money aside over the next 5 to 10 years based on a consultant, an expert in the field on where we should be spending our money wisely, I guess if that's the word. So that's the essence of that plan.
Perfect, Terry. Okay, that's great. I think that certainly, again, back to Councilor McKechnie, in the last few months, having the discussion about the Dunedin Park and how our staff made a recommendation and then the community pushed back that they didn't like the recommendation. So council moved that around to satisfy the needs. So this would be a very useful tool for us, as all of our plans are. We invest in these plans. We have master plans for a lot of things in our community. And so I think it's a good idea. I'm hopeful that the work can be completed in this next budget. Like, we need this plan to be activated and then to be, well, first of all, to be completed with proper consultation with the public and members of council. And then we also need it to be completed so that it can be reflective in the next round when we have this discussion as a council in another year's time. So Terry, are you hopeful that you'll be able to meet that requirement within this calendar year?
Oh yes, absolutely, Your Worship. I'm hoping to have my goals is to have a final report by early spring 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our goal. As long as it's the accessibility to our consultants. That's always a challenge. We know right now that under the COVID regulations that a lot of suppliers are hard to find. Consultants are no different. They are pretty busy. So as long as consultants or experts in the field are available, and they're, and the prices aren't out of the range. We talked about the landscaping project at the library. We saw those amounts and they were way over our budget. So as long as the consultants' fees are still reasonable and and we have access to them, then yeah, I feel confident bringing a report in spring of 2022. If not, I will definitely inform council of some of the anomalies that we may have, because of COVID or for whatever other reason, budgetary. I'll share that with council, but our goal is to be aggressive with this and get this completed in spring.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you for that. Tom, did you want to jump in on some of this discussion about the park plan? Tom?
Yeah, not getting to the discussion, but Terry summed it up great. Just for an example, as a detail within that plan is that we start thinking of our green space as a park system, and that we have and we manage it that way in all aspects, promoting it. For example, where our geography permits, that's one of our challenges, that we can start linking them with our trail plans as well, wherever possible, whether it's within a community or where there's opportunities on a like the rail trail to start linking them together. So that's the idea.
Sure. And the county of Simcoe made a commitment actually at the county budget to work on the rail trail and the rail connection down to New Lowell and further into Angus, actually. So that's part of the county budget system. Yeah. All right, perfect. Terry and Amanda, if I may, unless there's anybody else, I've got some more questions I want to ask in this area. To Amanda, on your page about signature events, we did have a quick chat about that. Councillor Deneen brought that up. I wanted to ask about the signature events and about the commercial value of like the Tourist Moor and the Copper Kettle Festival to Creemore Springs Brewery as a major partner. I think you explained it well, the kind of funding that we put into supporting that for to make the event successful. Can you help me understand a little bit more though about how the branding of Clearview Township works with these festivals when they're very much focused on the commercial aspect of Creemore Springs Brewery?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. So I think one of the advantages that we have is creating the signature events rack card and the promotions both on social media and through our radio and print campaigns. It drives people back to our Discover Clearview website first and foremost, so that is the primary point of contact for our local residents and for visitors coming into the area. So for our radio campaign, when we pay for advertisements like inbound as well as outside of our area, it's not referencing the Creemore Springs website, nor do they necessarily want that. This is about creating those destination festivals to bring people back into downtown Creemore and back to Clearview time and time again. So that is definitely one of the main ways, is utilizing our asset of discoverclearview.ca. The other second way is our tourism team is on site at every single one of these signature events. We invest a significant amount of time and special event equipment and resources to be present so that we have feet on the street talking about all of the wonderful things that are in Clearview Township. So that's the time when we're handing out our maps, our brochures, the tearaway maps that everyone really loves to see. Our students are trained to interact with the consumer, interact with visitors, and including locals there to answer questions about what they can do that weekend and when they can come back, what to expect in the future. So I see a lot of cross promotion when we attend these large scale events, so that we're able to talk about the other farmers markets and the other activities and the other programs that are happening in Clearview. So I hope that answered your question. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
No, it's good, Amanda. And I mean, certainly I've been around to see these festivals and I attend them and I enjoy them. And I know the residents do too, that I speak to when they're at them. The question I always ask myself, though, is because, you know, we are trying to promote Clearview Township as the brand and as the destination. And the Discover Clearview website is a fantastic resource and it remains a really important part of our marketing. I'm just making sure that you here and the rest of council understand that we invest Clearview taxpayers' dollars to help promote Clearview Township at these events that already bring a whole lot of people to our community. So while we're supporting an event like the Tourist More or like the Copper Kettle Festival, those are great events that happen in our community. The branding of those events says a different message than what Clearview Township is. And so I want to make sure that we understand that we're trying to focus, as Tom was saying earlier, about bringing us all together after COVID, trying to bring us all together as one community, that this is a really important aspect of how our signature events really are Clearview events. Do you agree, Amanda? I mean, that's where I'm hoping we're going with this investment of taxpayers' dollars.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our mandate right now is not to have the events change their names. I think that's what you're alluding to, is by calling them a Clearview event. So creating the Clearview signature events is our way of bringing everybody underneath that brand. Any new events that are coming forward, we're doing our best to bring that Clearview Township experience. So a good example coming up is the Clearview Christmas, the Stop and Shop sales event. So as new things come on board, we're able to, but some of these long-standing existing events and festivals, they are maintaining their unique identity. No different than the GNE at the Collingwood Fairgrounds or the Gathering of the Classics at the Edenvale Aerodrome. So very valid point, and I definitely can see how that can be confusing, but we really are trying to emphasize that it is all about Clearview Township and bringing people in, but those unique events, those are the names of those unique events.
Fair enough. I'm not so worried specifically about the naming. I'm more concerned that Clearview taxpayers understand that Clearview taxpaying dollars go and support events that support Clearview Township. That's really what we're trying to do. Can I just go back to the 3-on-3 and the outdoor show? It's a good write-up in here, Terry. How much are they? Like, I don't see how much we're actually putting in to promote this event or make that happen. Is there a value that we need to know that we're investing in those two events that council is approving in the budget process, Terry?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there is there's a $25,000 expense line that's part of our operation, but there's a $25,000 revenue side as well. So it's a cost neutral type of both are cost neutral. We're actually anticipating making approximately $20,000 profit per event. So hopefully $40,000. We're kind of going away from the spending money for our events, but not, from a township perspective. We're leaning more towards now trying to generate some programs that will actually generate some revenue, generate a profit, and in turn can be reinvested into our programming for our department. So there's the $25,000 in, $25,000 out. That's there are line items in our budget, but there's no increases or decreases to our bottom line, if you know what I'm saying. Again, these are anticipated because we haven't done them yet. We're just going on past experience. Like I've done these 3-on-3 before. Amanda and I have worked at trade shows before. We have some experience. We know from past history, they typically generate that kind of revenue. So that's where we're anticipating to go with that.
Right. Well, thank you. I'm just looking to make sure that, in the interest of transparency, that we know what we're looking at investing and know what we're looking at coming back. So, all right. Overall, that's really all the questions I have about the recreation budget and tourism budget. I do want to acknowledge that it's very quickly, as Tom pointed out, it's very quickly becoming apparent that we have a big department and they're doing a lot of great things, and it continues to grow. And so it's certainly something that Clearview Township should be proud of the fact that we've done so well, by being strategic and spending money carefully, and also looking at how we can, honestly keep our residents excited and interested in recreation and tourism and culture, as well as the visitors that come to our community. And none is better than the example of the community garden project that was kicked off during a pandemic. Huge success this year. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to do in the future. So I think it's a great compliment to how Clearview Township is doing when it comes to our recreation department. So thank you very much, and continue to evolve and pivot and all those other great words that we use during this crazy pandemic. So good job. If there's nothing further, does anybody else get anything further in this department discussion? All right. Well, then thank you very much, staff from that department. Looks like we are now at the end of our presentations this far in our budget workshop sessions council. So we're over at item number 4, which is council questions and proposals. So if there's anything anybody wants to bring up at this time, this is a good opportunity for you to do it. And so maybe I'll open the floor. I see there's a card already from Mr. Walker. Hello, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple items I would like to just even throw out for discussion at this point. First of all, I'd like to go back to bylaw. Not in a negative way either. Not in a negative way. Tom's comments earlier with regards to growth and the effects on other departments. I have not talked to staff or to management on this, but I feel that this department is kind of being left behind in moving forward. We asked them to be proactive in some activities, and I'm sure that we'll be asking them to be proactive in others. We're talking about asking, moving bylaws and putting new bylaws in place, which require enforcement. I really feel that we should be looking at least another half-time bylaw officer. We have our winter parking hours in effect from now till April. We have developments that are increasing demands on our streets. And the other thing that really kind of brought this forward was out driving around and watching the garbage truck, the garbage vehicles trying to pick up garbage with cars parked in driveways, and it's not affecting theirs, but it's affecting the neighbors. So I feel that we talk about enforcement on our speeds, and I think our enforcement at the township level needs to be increased. So I would like to see at least a half-time bylaw enforcement office increased to half-time, and I imagine that's going to be roughly about a $50,000 bill if you look at the wages and benefits. I'm just throwing that out there for discussion, but I would like to see that move forward. I really feel it's needed for the township of Clearview.
Okay, good discussion. If I may, I'd like to turn to the CAO and or the clerk. Ms. Helmke, do you have any comment about operations of our bylaw department? John, shall I go to you first? Do you got any comment on that to support Councillor Walker's request?
Yes, and thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Walker. Bylaw enforcement has been on our mind as well. It's one of those areas that is going to be seeing increased demands. It has seen increased demands during COVID, and I think it's put a lot of extra work on our bylaw enforcement. They've done a great job. They continue to do a great job, but I think the demands with the potential of that many new homes and people coming into the community, I anticipate that the demand will increase. So it will be a part of our discussions going forward. But I do appreciate your comment, and it is an important point.
Okay, Sasha, Ms. Humke.
Thank you, Mayor. Measures for you to Councillor Walker and the rest of council. First of all, thank you for bringing this up. This is on our radar. We thought it was maybe a little bit premature for 2022, but we are gathering information. I've just seen in my short time being here, well, being back at Clearview, the amount of new bylaws, requests to review parking enforcement in different areas and what that means for the bylaw enforcement department. So it is on our radar. It is something that we would probably be considering for a 2023 budget. We just made sure that we were being kind of lean in our budget this year, understanding that there are demands on our resources, but we understood there was other departments that really needed funds towards their budget at this point.
All right. Councillor Walker, do you want to follow up on that? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and that's fine. I just felt that, you know, like we've talked other years about shift work, afternoons and weekends, in order to help curb some of the inactivities of our drivers that don't like to follow rules and regulations. So if staff are quite happy with it on the radar and looking at 2023, then that's fine. I just felt that was one department that, with all the growth and everything, the demands, that we were falling behind, and that we needed to keep up with that enforcement area when we've got, you know, property standards and all the other parts of the bylaws that they deal with. So that's fine. I'm happy with that for 2023. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. John, did you have something else you want to add on that one?
No, I think Sasha summed it up properly, and we're in support of moving in that direction, but we want to make sure it's a measured process.
Okay. Anybody else with any? Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Walker. Anybody else with any other suggestions, ideas, questions, proposals? Again, Mr. Walker. Okay.
This is for recreation.
Okay.
I've talked to Terry on this, and trying to get a price is not easy to obtain. I talked about the sign outside of the arena.
Yes.
We have an antiquated sign that, as far as I'm concerned, should be a new electronic sign, not as a information highway. Now that the library's there, this is something that I feel would be a benefit to that area. Many events were going to take place up in that area, so therefore I think we should be able to advertise and promote. Presently, it's an old manual sign that they have to go out with the stick and letters and punch in and punch out as staff, so it would certainly save staff time. Trying to look at costs, I think you're going to be looking at $100,000, give or take, when you go into an electronic sign, depending on how elaborate you want to make it. So I mean, we could run from 50 to 100,000 depending on what we want to do with it. But I also feel that this should be a joint venture between the library and the Parks and Rec. Both will benefit immensely from this type of activity. Signage, where we could be advertising our 3-on-3 and all those other events that are coming, as well as other events in the township, on a scrolled electronic sign with parameters, of course, for lighting, et cetera, for the neighborhood and all that. So That's another thing that I don't know whether we want to do this or put it in the horizon for 2023, but we're looking at, I would say, $75,000 to $100,000 in costs for that process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Before I go to staff, I'd like to go to Councillor Broderick. John, you and I and Councillor Leishman sit with the members of the library board. John, I recall, I can't think of the date, but within the last 12 months, did we not have a discussion about the sign at the arena? And I thought that there was a discussion about the library co-opting with that. So do you recall that conversation, John? Maybe I'm out to lunch.
I recall the conversation, but unfortunately, I don't recall the date either.
So there you go. I just thought I'd mention it because I know that the library board did discuss that. And it was mentioned, I think one of the board members pointed out that as they get busier at the library, they were hoping that they could use the future sign to promote things that are happening at the library as well. So to Councillor Walker's point, this is a very good point that that facility will be used for a lot of things. And so that would be a significant investment for sure. Okay, thanks, John. If I can I go over to Mr. Ferguson and or Mr. Vachon? Mr. Walker's point or request is a good point here, and that I'm not sure how far along we are with that discussion about the signage there. First of all, Mr. Ferguson, do you know anything about that? Have you talked to the CAO at the library about this?
No, I've not had any discussions about it. I do recall someone bringing it up, mentioning that the sign is wanting at the Stainer Arena, and a digital sign opportunity was raised. It might have been Councillor Walker in another discussion. I know it was raised. We haven't into it in any great detail. There's certainly a benefit to the electronic signs and how you can use them with the community. They can be used for a lot of valuable information. So we can look further at that, what the costs are, and maybe look at when would be the opportune time to get one in that it fits in our budget timelines and we can pay for it without increasing any taxes.
That's the objective here. Terry, have you recall any of that discussion? The cooperative sign out there at the end of the road?
No, sorry, Your Worship, I don't recall those discussions.
Okay.
I've been in contact with obviously Jennifer there at the library as well. We know there's a need to replace that sign. Councillor Walker brings up an excellent project. The problem with that project, and I've shared this with Councillor Walker, is that it's not easy to get a price from those companies. If you go on all their websites, it says call for pricing. And one of the reasons it's like that is because you really need to know what you really, really want. You can't just say, well, I want a sign. You need to know the size, the specs, the level of quality that you want. And it takes time to really figure that out. And then they provide you a quote based on your needs or your demand or your wishes that you would like to do. So, if more work needs to be done, somebody or a group of folks, if it's the library board or whoever, has to really nail down what style and what kind of sign that you really want, to really narrow down to the type of sign, to really get a good idea of what it would cost. Councillor Walker's amount of 75 to 100 is a good number. And the reality is it could even be more than that. I've seen some $200,000 signs if you really want to get fancy. Again, you really need to nail down what you want. Somebody has to be the lead on that to really, nail that. And then from there, try to put together a group or try to figure out who can really pay for it, because it is quite pricey. The advantage of that location, Your Worship, is that it has power. It has hydro at that location already. So bringing power to those locations sometimes is quite expensive as well. The beauty about that location is it already has the required power. So we're already halfway there with that component. But I don't recall, Your Worship, that there's those discussions.
Okay. All right, Councillor Walker, where do you want to go with this then?
Well, I just want to say to Terry, I tried navigating those ports with the companies, and boy, oh boy, you got that right on. Is it ever a maneuver of trying to get through to anybody and get some pricing? And you're right. They want all kinds of information, and it's the design, of course. I guess my other question is, does anybody remember what the cost of the one at the fire hall was? The community hub. I mean, I know that's a few years ago, and I realize what costs certainly have elevated. but that might give us a bit of a ballpark figure as well as some numbers. I don't know if Terry feels comfortable with that. The trouble is, I don't know where we get the money, and I don't want to increase taxes. I don't want to put a burden on the taxation at this point in time for that. If it's something that we feel that we can live with and put forward in 2020 for 2023, then I'm quite happy with that. But I just felt that some of these things need to be brought forward, and we need to be thinking on some of this as we develop and grow. And to me, it was mentioned, that's the highway for information, is right in that location. It covers a lot of events.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see the chief has rejoined us. Chief Payment, kind of forgotten. Were you involved in that part of the project back then? Well, that's a few years ago. Chief?
Thank your worship, and through to Councillor Walker. Yeah, I did see costing and stuff like that,
Okay.
of that nature, just kind of as stuff went on. Actually, if you do recall, Chief Schul and I were the ones that ended up putting that sign in. So that at the time, so that was probably about 2013, it was about $65,000.
There you go. Okay, thanks for that information, Chief. 2013, holy cow, time moves on. Anyway, okay, Councillor Walker, if I may, I think what I think we need to do is to simply just have the council ask the CAO to look into this to complete that project at the arena with the with the library build that's gone on there, the redevelopment of the community center, the increased activity at the arena itself, even the parking lot. Holy cow, we painted the parking lot last year. We've got paint on the parking lot. There's a lot of activity happening in that center. So Councillor Walker, I would suggest simply we just need to ask through the CAO that we get a work project to sort this out and come up with a recommendation that could come back to council. What are your thoughts, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, no, that would be fine. I would like to do that then, because I feel that if they're going to redevelop the grounds around the library landscape and the potential for the new accessible playground, this all fits hand in hand with the rest of that development of that area. So that would be a very good move forward to get CAO then to just look at that project to see if and when.
Okay, so Councillor Walker, is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion then that the staff and CAO look at a new electronic sign, digital sign, in conjunction with the library as well, to share the costs or to look at developing that area, the sign, to see if it's feasible and cost wise.
All right. Good recommendation. Is there a seconder? Mr. Broderick? Okay. Mr. CAO, are you comfortable with that simple direction?
Yes, I am, Your Worship, and I think he wants to make sure that we have the ability, the location of it. Terry mentioned that the power hookup, basically get an idea of what the cost is, and then that'll put us in good position for when we want to make a decision on it.
Sure, you can report back to council. All right, Madam Clerk, have you got the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. So moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Be it resolved that council directs staff and the CEO to look at new electronic and digital signage in conjunction with the library board at developing a sign design and costs in front of the Stainer Arena.
And report back to council. Okay. Any questions on the directive? Yes. Okay, Mr. Patterson, Mr. McKechnie, go ahead.
Just, is it the general understanding that we're talking about 2023, or is the motion intended for an attempt to try to get into 2022?
Good question. Mr. Walker, what would you say? Oh, you're muted there, friend.
Well, I'm not sure whether we could get all the information in line for the budget this year. I would like to see 2022, to be honest with you. I feel that we're going to be there developing some lands up there already to move forward with this. I feel it is important that should be put in place. So I would like to see 2022.
Mr. Patterson?
Well, again, I wouldn't make a decision now. I'm happy with getting a staff report. But you know, we've added a couple things, and that makes my list of trying to reduce our burden that much higher. But it's all a good idea, so we just have to put it in the mix. So I'm not opposed to seeing it, but I can't having the report, but I can't see funding it in 2022 with all the other things we have.
That's the best part about working in a workshop situation, is we'll put forward these asks and
yeah,
we'll make a decision in January when we pass the budget.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKechnie, you got a question? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Your Worship.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was my phone that rang. Yeah, I would support the motion, but I want staff to we should recognize that that is just a residential street that we're talking, as opposed to in front of the fire hall, which is a highway. So I hope that we're not going to be looking at a sign as large as what is at the fire hall. So as long as staff take that into consideration, I'll support the motion that, you know, we recognize that we're dealing with a residential street. So, and the other thing too, we put any sort of illuminated sign out there because it is a residential street. Now we're looking at complaints from the residents around there too, because it's going to be lit up at night and such. So anyway, yeah, but I'll support the motion for an appropriate sign, we'll call it, at the arena there. So thank you.
Thank you for your sensitivity on that issue. Certainly the flashing signs have generated complaints from our residents across our township. I can think of a couple of churches across our community that have had flashing signs over the years. Anyhow, okay, that's a good point, and I'm sure Mr. CAO will take that into consideration. Anything further than on this motion? So we're asking again, Madam Clerk, that this would be presented to us prior to the 2022 budget being presented. So it's something for us to consider. John, is it possible to get something together by the 13th of December? Get an idea what it is it might look like? Mr. Ferguson?
I can take a look at it and see if I'm able to. I'll bring it in for December 13th.
All right, just saying that's for the before the public meeting. That's the best time to get it in. Anything further? Madam Clerk, did you have something? Sasha?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Measures. Would you like me to read the motion again?
Sure, go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Be it resolved that Council direct Parks and Recreation staff and the CAO to look at a new electronic and digital sign for in front of the Stainer Arena in conjunction with the Library Board, including developing a sign design and cost, and then a report be brought back to Council for consideration prior to the final 2022 budget being considered.
Sounds logical to me. Anybody else? All right, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Thank you. Are there any opposed? Nope. Okay, thank you. That carries. Okay, Mr. Walker, anything further? You've already gone for two already. Good job.
No, Your Worship. I will just sit back now and be quiet. Thank you.
No, you don't need to do that. Okay, any other members of council with any questions, comments, proposals that they'd like to bring forward? Yes, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, just one for Kelly as we're wrapping up here. So just like we've done on a couple of the projects we're talking about, is it 22, 20, or 23? Is it phased, all that sort of thing? Are we still trying to have a principle of a multi-year budget? Well, I would say multi-year being 20, 21, and 23 for an actual budget projection for 23, and then an outlook for programs that might extend beyond 2023. For example, the Collingwood Street Bridge, for example, and maybe some of the halls. So is there a plan to have a multi-year view?
Kelly.
Through your worship to Councillor Patterson, right now we're looking at a 2022 and 2023 budget package. So when we come back at the end of the November 29th meeting, I'll pull together all departments for 2022 and 2023 with the projected increases each year. We're looking at that this year as sort of a bridge for the election. And if it works well, we'll extend it out, hoping to get to a 2020 or a 5-year operating rather. But yes, absolutely. That'll be part of the budget package that comes out.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, Tom, I think it's great to see that we're looking at least a 2-year now. Used to be a time when we only ever dealt with a 1-year. So I think I'm happy to see the projections coming forward that recognize a 2-year. We're getting there.
Good.
Thank you. Any other members with any questions, comments, proposals, additions, subtractions, quadruplications? No? All right. Again, I just want to remind again, in a workshop setting, we obviously bring forward these recommendations and nothing is confirmed until the budget is passed. So we'll continue to be a working document through this workshop setting. And so I think this has been a pretty good session so far. Our next group of presentations, which will include the Public Works Department, which is a pretty significant portion of our every annual budget. That will be at our next meeting. And so we look forward to that discussion, along with hearing from our library and other departments as well. Members of council, if you're comfortable, I'm prepared to call for the bylaw to confirm. Unless there's anything further in this discussion about budgets. Any questions? All right. Council, bylaw to confirm. Recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw number 21-110, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the November 15, 2021 council meeting, be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 15th day of November 2021. Mover and seconder on the bylaw. Roderick Deneen. Roderick Deneen. Any questions on the bylaw? All those in favor? The confirmatory bylaw carries. Motion to adjourn is recommendation, be it resolved that the council meeting be adjourned. What is that at 3:10 p.m. on this date? Mover and seconder. Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lamers. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lamers. I'm prepared to call it. All those in favor? Motion is adjourned. So before we leave, I just want to thank all of our staff who have participated. I want to acknowledge again our treasurer and our deputy treasurer who worked diligently on this. And always, council, send in your questions to them. They will be quick to answer them. All the best. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.